Call to order tonight's Committee of the Whole for the City Council meeting of September the 17th, 2019. Council should have the minutes from the meeting of the Committee of the Whole meeting from September the 3rd, 2019. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are carried from September the 3rd, 2019. Industrial Development Board, Mayor Pro Tem Witten.
Yes, sir. So we have two vacancies. I will start with the first vacancy of Laura Cooper, who has served one full term. It is her intent to serve a second term, and so therefore I nominate Ms. Cooper for a second term for the Industrial Development Board.
Second.
All right, we do have a motion and a second for Ms. Cooper, okay?
So can we go ahead and approve that one, and then we'll move to the second?
Is that okay to do it that way, Megan, to go ahead and approve that? Okay, all right. So we have a motion and a second for Ms. Laura Cooper. Any questions, comments? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll appoint Ms. Cooper later on in the agenda.
All right, and for the second vacancy, Mr. Ted Wilson has served two full terms, and therefore we have an opening, and so I'd like to nominate William Bill Ham for that position.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for Bill Ham. Do I have any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of Bill Ham, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Have two oppositions. So we will appoint Mr. Ham later on in the agenda. Okay. Lee County Youth Development Center Board of Directors.
Thank you. We have one vacancy. Ms. Leith has served one partial term. She is not staying in that role, so therefore we have one vacancy, and I'd like to nominate Steve Pelham for that position.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for Mr. Steve Pelham. Are there any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Stephanie Pollard.
Okay. Do I have a second for Ms. Pollard?
Second.
All right, motion second. All right. Any other nominations? Okay, we'll take these one at a time. Megan, at this point in time, we've got two nominations. I just want to make sure I follow procedure right. We'll just do this by voice vote?
Absolutely, and if you get a majority on the first one you vote on, then that's the end of the process.
All right, so we'll take Mr. Pelham first since he was the first one nominated. So all in favor of Mr. Pelham, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let's get a hand vote on that if we would. All in favor of Mr. Pelham, please raise your hand. That's 5. All right, so that is a majority. And we'll appoint Mr. Pelham later on in the agenda. Okay, any questions on tonight's agenda for Assistant City Manager, Ms. Crouch?
Mayor, I have one minor change. Item 8C9, there was a typo. Caitlin has for you just a revised front page in the resolution. It had the words 48 and in parentheses the number 36, and it's supposed to be 36 and 36. So it's highlighted for you just in case you wanted to see the corrected version. That was uploaded to the website, but wanted to make sure you had the right version in your files, and that would be an operator error of myself for not catching that. So, but that's all the changes I have for you this evening.
Any other questions for the Assistant City Manager?
Mayor, I don't have a question, I have a comment. I'd like to ask everybody to remember the Tuscaloosa police officer lost his life in the line of duty last night. Tonight, well, we can imagine, we know what they're going through up there, as we lost one ourselves back in the spring. So our thoughts and prayers are with them tonight. I know that's rough on them. I ask that you always remember what our police officers do for us. Sometimes it can be a thankless job, but I appreciate everything you do, Lieutenant Higgins, you and all your folks. I know it's painful for you to have to relive this again against the close, but appreciate what you do and what all of y'all do.
Thank you, Tommy. Any other questions or comments? Okay, do I have a move to adjourn this Committee of the Whole?
So moved.
All right, the Committee of the Whole is adjourned. We'll begin the City Council meeting at 7 o'clock. Tonight's City Council meeting for September 17th, 2019. Caitlin?
Dawson,
Here.
Dixon,
Here.
Griswold, Hovey,
Here.
Parsons,
Here.
Smith,
Present.
Taylor,
Here.
Witten,
Here.
Anders.
Here. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence? And I'd like to repeat what Councilman Dawson said. Please remember the city of Tuscaloosa and the family of the lost police officer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. During the Committee of the Whole, we had a couple of board appointments. To the Industrial Development Board, we appointed Ms. Laura Cooper and Mr. Bill Ham, and to the Lee County Youth Development Center Board of Directors, we appointed Mr. Steve Pelham. Any other announcements for anyone on the council?
Mayor, I just would like to say this morning, I had the honor of meeting with some women from the DAR, and you had signed a proclamation recognizing Constitution Week, and so we presented that to them, and they're very pleased and thankful.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Whitten, for being there this morning. Any other announcements for anyone on the council? Seeing none, Auburn University Communications.
Hello, how are all of y'all?
Doing good.
Good. The Samuel Ginn College of Engineering hosted a dedication ceremony on September 13th to celebrate the opening of the new Brown Copel Engineering Student Achievement Center, which will provide one of the most comprehensive active learning environments in the country. The Harbor College of Business also celebrated the opening of the new Horton Hardgrave Hall, an addition that is helping the College of Business secure its place among the nation's best. The Auburn Board of Trustees has decided to move forward with a project to replace the Hill Residence Halls and Cambridge Residence Hall. The buildings will be replaced through a series of projects over the next 5 to 10 years. Sga Safety Week is taking place this week, and we are extremely excited to be working with the city's Travel with Care program this Friday to raise awareness about how to travel safely along our roads. This week is filled with great events from many partners, and we're thrilled that the city is participating and helping make Safety Week such a successful event for students. SGA has recently spent the past few weeks working with officials from Tiger Transit to improve a couple of key routes. We received feedback from students through our Auburn Answers feedback system about concerns with overcrowding on the South Donahue route and long route times on the North Auburn route. In response, Tiger Transit has provided an extra bus during peak times on the South Donahue route and implemented a new stop on the North Auburn route, which has cut 10 to 15 minutes off of the route. We're excited to continue to work with Tiger Transit to make sure that that service is meeting students' needs. Homecoming was a huge success. A big thank you to all of the community members that participated in the parade and attended the festivities. We are so thankful for community and university that are so intertwined. That concludes this week's report. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking of being so intertwined, last week we had the groundbreaking of the new East Alabama Medical Center facility that'll be on campus at Auburn University, and what a fantastic amenity that's going to be, not only for the university, but all the city of Auburn, and a very exciting moment last week on campus. All right, at this time, it's citizens' communications for items that are on the agenda. I would ask you to recognize that later on in the agenda, there are some things that you might be interested in that will have public hearings involved in that, and that will be your time to speak to that, particularly if you look under resolutions. Also, at the very end will be the discussion on the Colors Home, and we'll have a public hearing with that as well. So I would encourage you to please save your comments for those topics when that time comes up. But if there's anything else on the agenda tonight that you'd like to speak to the council, now's your time. If you'd please come forward and give your name and address for the record, and you do have 5 minutes. Anything else on the agenda you'd like to talk about? Okay. Seeing none. Ms. Crouch?
Mayor, under City Manager's communications this evening, we have the announcement of 3 vacancies on the Building Board of Adjustments. Terms begin November 3rd, 2019, and end November 2nd, 2023. 3 vacancies on the Tree Commission. Terms begin November 8th, 2019, and end November 7th, 2022. And 1 vacancy on the Education Building Authority. Term begins November 12th, 2019, and ends November 11th, 2025. All of these appointments will be made at the October 15th, 2019 meeting. Mayor, our next item of business is the consent agenda. Does any council member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and deal with that item individually?
Yes, item 8C4. No. I found my answer to that. Item 8C9.
Okay. Anything else?
Anything else? 8C9, anything else? Okay, if we could go ahead and handle 8C9.
All
Ms.
righty.
Miguel.
Let's get there for a second. Item 8C9 is authorizing a 12-month extension for Auburn Mall LLC to complete Phase 1 and proposed partial demolition of the former JCPenney anchor building as part of the Commercial Development and Incentive Agreement for Redevelopment Area B that was adopted on September 19th, 2017.
For approval.
Second.
But,
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Yep.
okay, I saw that when I was reading in the packet. So do y'all know at this time what's going there? Or have they?
No, ma'am. What this deal was predicated on for Redevelopment Area B is we had an empty JCPenney's box, and the mall came to the city and said, we're actually going to reduce square footage in the mall. And in doing that, we're going to put a new mall entrance, and you can see that they're formulating some small shop space that, again, turns to the outside. Some of it will also be accessible from the inside. Then what they're asking for is just a time extension to complete that work. We can see that they're, a high percentage complete, and you have a letter in your packet about 90% complete. And they have some tenants that they're not ready to announce, but some of that's going in other space. And I have been actively working with them because I wear 2 hats right now, still handling some commercial development for the city, actively working with them, and there have been a number of tenants looking. I think they're just not ready to publicly speak about those tenants.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, we do have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that motion carries.
Mayor, do you want to vote on the remainder of the consent agenda?
Yeah. Do I have a motion for the remainder of the consent agenda? We have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any comments or questions on anything? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda is carried.
Righty. Okay, under ordinances this evening, item 9A is amending the no parking zone on Williams Avenue that was adopted via ordinance 3173 on August 6th, 2019.
I'll introduce the ordinance and ask for unanimous consent.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Does anyone on the council have a problem moving forward to the vote on this evening?
Gonna abstain from voting.
Okay. Seeing none, do I have any questions? Okay. Caitlin?
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Dixon,
Yes.
Hovey,
Yes, ma'am.
Parsons,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes, ma'am.
Taylor Gibson, Witten,
Yes.
Sanders.
Yes.
Item 9B is a request for annexation by Brett Basquin on behalf of Michael Allen Homes for 23.5 acres located immediately southwest of 8998 Hillendale Drive and approximately 1,700 feet from Alla Hill Drive. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval.
I'll introduce the ordinance and ask for unanimous consent.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Does anyone on the council have a problem moving forward with a vote on this evening? Seeing none, are there any questions?
Just as, in our packet meeting on Friday, we discussed that a portion of this does reside outside of the optimal boundary, but that was, could you speak to that a little bit?
Mr. Cotton, speak to that, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Just based on principle, we recommended the denial of one of the parcels, but there was an irregularity in the boundary on the south side. We've rounded off a lot of the boundary on the north side, but quite frankly, we may just have overlooked this one. So as a practical matter, if you review in the staff report, we tried to make it pretty clear to the Planning Commission that it was totally acceptable and appropriate to annex. Bob?
Yeah, Forrest,
Yes, sir.
I see in that recommendation approval for Lot 7, yet denial of Lot 8.
That's right.
And you're comfortable with that, even
Yeah.
though that you're saying unanimous, that you've approved it unanimously?
We do. Just to be consistent, we try to stick with what's in the optimal boundary and what's outside, but in this case, you can see the irregularity is so clear, it just makes common sense to bring it in, and so we wanted to make sure we acknowledge that.
And, I'm sorry, any more?
Anyone else have a question?
I do have one last. So just if we were to approve this and that is outside the optimal, it does not move the optimal boundary.
What we will do is, we typically, I like to say for lack of a better word, we batch things up for cleanup purposes, and we will do periodic comp plan adjustments, and at that time, we will bring that property into the optimal boundary. We did a very similar assessment with the Planning Commission about a year and a half ago, when we did the first 5-year plan update, and we cleaned up a lot of irregularities on the north side, but we didn't pay a lot of attention to the south side.
Any other questions? All right, we do have a motion and a second, so, Caitlin?
Dixon,
Yes.
Hovey,
Yes, ma'am.
Parsons,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes, ma'am.
Taylor,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Anders.
Yes, ma'am.
Under resolutions this evening, item 10A1 is a request by Parker Lewis on behalf of C&D GA/AL Properties LLC for conditional use approval of a commercial support use warehouse for property located at 1999 Mall Boulevard in the Comprehensive Development District. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval. A public hearing is required.
We'll open the public hearing. If you'd like to address the council on this, please come forward and give your name and address for the record. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Are there any questions or comments from the council?
So if we make a motion to approve, should we ask that it be approved with staff comments as noted in the?
Yes, ma'am. And that's typically what the Planning Commission does. It's typically what we do is we assume that all the staff comments are adopted unless it's stated otherwise, but certainly for purposes of clarity, you can certainly do that.
Move for approval, I'm sorry.
You can do that, but it's also noted in the Planning Commission resolution, which is part of your packet, that you would be adopting it.
Any other questions? All right, do I have a motion?
Move for approval with staff comments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 10A2 is a request by Lloyd De La Tour on behalf of Dacula Design Group LLC for conditional use approval of a performance residential development multifamily for property located at 121 Mitcham Avenue in the redevelopment district. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval. A public hearing is required.
We'll open the public hearing. If you'd like to address the council on this, please come forward and give your name and address for the record. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Are there any questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 10A3 is a request by Jonathan Davis on behalf of RPM Magnolia Plaza LLC, conditional use approval of a commercial and entertainment use with lounge and event center for property located at 145 East Magnolia Avenue in the urban core and College Edge Overlay District. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval. A public hearing is required.
We'll open the public hearing. If there's anyone who'd like to address the council on this subject, please come forward and give your name and address for the record. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Council, are there any questions or comments?
This location has been previously zoned as a lounge.
Yes, ma'am. There have been at least 2 lounges that have previously occupied this tenant space.
Right, I think it is important to note that there has been some confusion if people don't check the packet that this space faces the parking garage, not Magnolia itself. Just to be clear, if you were looking in your packets. It's a back, what would you say, not quite half of the building.
Yeah. Any other questions? Comments? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 10A4 is a request by Parker Ross on behalf of Owens Family Partnership LLC for conditional use approval of a performance residential development townhomes for property located near the southeastern corner of Shug Jordan Parkway and North Donahue Drive behind the Walmart Neighborhood Market in Development District Housing. Planning Commission recommended approval with a 6-3 vote. A public hearing is required.
Megan, before we open up the public hearing, I want to ask you a quick question. So the connectivity seems to be a driving concern with this project. Can we approve the conditional use without approving the connectivity? How do we?
I'm going to have the planning director, Forrest Cotton, direct that a little bit further and give you some additional information. But yes, the short answer is you can do that. You can add conditions. But remember, and he'll get deeper into this with conditional use approval, that there has to be some sort of public purpose for it, a health, safety, welfare issue, and Forrest can further expand on that.
Yeah, you've got, the beauty of conditional use is that, quite frankly, we work a lot in the gray in planning with a little bit of black and white on either side. So there's a lot of discretion, subjectivity involved. You know, what's compatible to one person may not be to another. But the evaluation of traffic and traffic conditions and the impact on the character of the neighborhood, and in addition to the public health, safety, and welfare issue that the Assistant City Manager mentioned, all come into play. So it's certainly within this body's purview to make a condition that relates to traffic circulation if you think that the traffic circulation proposed could be detrimental to the public welfare.
Thank you. Any other follow-up questions from the council before we open the public hearing?
What if you feel like that, I have questions about it because of the safety of the citizens over there in that neighborhood. I'd prefer every neighborhood in Auburn have one way in and one way out. Crime is lower, it's proven to be lower in neighborhoods that have one way in and one way out. I understand where you're coming from, but is that a legitimate safety concern that I have, you know, under the planning laws or whatever?
Based on your experience, if it's a legitimate issue to you, then it's legitimate and fair for discussion of this body.
I'm highly opposed to it because when you got one way in, one way out of the neighborhood, the police can police it much better, and it tends to cut down on burglaries and things of that nature. So for that reason, I'd be opposed to connectivity.
Ms. Connie.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out the location. So it says the corner of Walmart sits on the corner, so.
It's directly behind, so there's an area, you can see the Alabama Power transmission lines run through that area, and it's an currently undeveloped area. I think some council members had inquired several weeks back about some minor clearing going on in that area, and they were doing some survey work and soil testing, but it sits behind the Walmart Neighborhood Market on Donahue, really, to access it.
If you look at your prox map, it kind of illustrates the zoning, so you'll see a DDH buffer that was, at the time of the 84 ordinance being adopted, was fairly prevalent as actually a zoning buffer between neighborhood conservation neighborhoods and CDD zoning. So this has been out there for quite some time. We have seen prior proposals on it, but I think this is the first time this council has seen it. And of course, bear in mind the subject of this review is the townhouse component only, which is at the front end of the development.
Everybody clear with that? Okay. All right. At this point in time, we'll open up the public hearing. If you'd like to address the city council, please come forward and give your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Emily Jortner. I live at 778 North Cary Drive. We actually have a petition. May I give you copies of that? I might not have enough for each one of you.
Okay, we'll share.
So you were asking about the location of the cut-through. A good friend of mine who should be coming here, she's putting her kids to bed, just bought a house that's right where the cut-through is going to be. My kids and I were just playing with her and her kids the other day, and I was saying, it's so nice your kids can learn to bike here. And I think what we're concerned about is safety, as you mentioned. We've already seen some increase in speed and volume of traffic in our neighborhood. There are a lot of people who cut through Shug Jordan, and they can get onto Owens, and they like to sort of zoom up Hickory. My house is on Cary. It's on a curve and a hill. So there's like no visibility, and people just love to zoom around there. And there's no sidewalk. But my concern really is safety and the residential character of our neighborhood. Personally, I welcome growth and development, and I welcome all people who would love to live in our beautiful city that's wooded, that's quiet, and that's safe. We can walk to campus. We love that about it, and we want to be able to do that. And we understand that growth and connectivity are important. We don't want those to come at the expense of safety and health. Our neighborhood has the #1 elementary school in the state, Cary Woods Elementary School. We have a park that we love. And these are features of this neighborhood that make it valuable and desirable for everyone to visit, for everyone to use. And increased traffic is a risk to that and a hazard. So when we found out that this cut-through road was going to happen, we started a petition on change.org. About 3 days later, we had 260 signatures. Some of them are not real. There's someone with kind of a funny name that I think just did it for a joke. Most of them we can look through and say, oh yeah, I know which house they live in. They're kids in my kindergarten class. And I think all of us want to preserve this in all parts of Auburn. I hope that there isn't a sense that we feel that our neighborhood is special or privileged. It is because it's in Auburn. But it's health and safety that we want for us and for our kids. We want that for everyone in Auburn. We want that for everyone in our county. So I hope that you can look through these signatures. I've also included the comments section, and I hope that you'll consider, personally, I'm not speaking for everyone. I don't mind if there's townhomes, everyone, we're growing. I don't want to see this cut through. I don't believe that this residential neighborhood should be open or easily accessible to through traffic. So people should not be commuting where kids walk and bike to school. Thank you.
Next.
My name is Aaron Annell. I live on Hickory Lane. I have a small family of 4, 2 kids. They're under 3 years old.
Sorry, could we get your address, please? Sorry, just for the record, thank you.
It's 1235 Hickory Lane.
I heard Hickory Lane. My bad, I didn't stop you, okay?
That's all right. I'm also opposed to this cut through. I don't really have opinion on that townhomes at all. It comes down to safety for me, the increased traffic that I think will happen between Shug and Donahue by going around. I guess they don't really have a turning lane there. I think people will kind of cut through the neighborhood. And that worries me because we have a nice park there. We have 2 schools that children walk to. We walk in the neighborhood. We don't really have sidewalks. So I see that as a concern. So everybody I've spoken to in the neighborhood on social media, we're all opposed to it. So I'd like if you consider that. Thank you.
Who will be next?
Hi, my name is Kate Weaver-Finkel. I live at 1229 Hickory Lane. Members of City Council, I ask that you oppose the Owens Road cut-through associated with the townhome development off of Donahue Road on the agenda this evening. I am the mother of 2 young children, one of which attends Cary Woods Elementary School, and we often walk and ride our bike to school and home, and our walkable neighborhood schools are one of the wonderful parts of living in Cary Woods. However, many of us have already had previous conversations, even before this discussion of the proposed Owens-Donahue connection, about the need for traffic calming measures and sidewalks due to all the cars and trucks cutting through and driving much faster than 25 miles per hour in our neighborhood, especially during rush hour. To add more traffic to our neighborhood would jeopardize the safety and our safety and the safety of our kids. And I believe that the cut through from Donahue to Owens into Cary Woods would increase outside traffic and put our kids and families' safety at risk. I know there's a lot of us that are probably going to speak tonight, but I think there are even more people here that maybe are not comfortable speaking. So if it's okay, everyone who's here from Cary Woods that opposes this cut through, would they stand up?
Sure.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
Who will be next?
My name's Margaret Flores. I live on 1122 Owens Road, and just like everyone said, just standing up to oppose the cut-through.
Thank you. Who'll be next?
My name is Ryan Schweck. I live at 1104 Owens Road. I live close to where the proposed cut-through would come through. If you look, we built our house in Owens Road approximately 3 years ago. One of the reasons that we did was because of the walkability of the neighborhood, so my children could play. I believe the cut-through will increase traffic and decrease the safety, especially if you look on Owens where the cut-through is coming through. There's a pretty sharp curve that can be blind sometimes for people coming through, and I think having a cut-through there would not be safe for the people in our neighborhood.
Who'll be next? Yes, ma'am.
Kelly Woods, 554 Cary Drive. I won't repeat everything my neighbors have said. I agree, and that's my feelings. I just want to say one additional thing. If you don't live in Cary Woods, you can sort of picture it as a quiet neighborhood and just dismiss it. There's not that much traffic. Come between 3:30 and 5:30, park your car, and go for a walk. On a weekday, when school is in session, it's quite difficult, and it's stressful when you have children that can't quite keep their bike in the bike lane, and here comes the UPS truck and several people home from Auburn University and Cary Woods Elementary, and they're just driving through. And so it's already crowded, it's already congested. Frankly, I would love to see speed bumps, not another cut through, so that's all.
Thank you. Who'll be next?
Hi, my name is Ashley Aston. I live at 1203 Jenkins Drive, which is quite close to where the Owens cut through will be. And I feel like not only will maybe some traffic be going just straight on Owens, it may, also have increased traffic on Jenkins, which currently there's no reason that there will really be any traffic on that. But my son rides his bike to pick every single day, he and his friends without parents. It's wonderful. I mean, they know to be careful, but I really do worry about the safety. That's such a valuable, piece of our neighborhood that our kids are safe enough to be able to ride their bike to school. And I see people who are envious from all other parts of the state that our children get to do that. And I think that it's going to completely change the character of our neighborhood to have an extra cut through like that and increase the traffic. So I appreciate you guys considering not allowing this.
Next.
My name is Susan Youngblood, and I'm at 729 North Cary Drive. I feel a little underdressed and misdressed today, but I wore my walking clothes for Cary Woods. My son is not particularly controlled on the bicycle. I won't even let him go to pick because he's going up the rest of Cary, up Hickory, and then down Cedar Brook. And right now we have, as you know, a multi-purpose lane, and that lane in some places, not on Hickory, not on Owens, not on some of the others. That lane is in lieu of a sidewalk. It's a painted stripe, it's reflective, that's a great start. But as we walk, we find that drivers frequently cut into the multi-purpose lane because they are trying to straighten the curves. Some of those curves are blind, some of those curves have mounds of earth, some of those curves have bushes, and my children have friends that are 4 houses away. They can attest to the fact that as they leave the house, I yell at them about clothing. We have we have drawers full of clothing that's bright, and what I would describe everybody wearing up here and in most of the room today, I would describe their clothing as road-colored clothing, and I yell, no road-colored clothing, because the cars can't see. I've already come upon an accident scene where someone was straightening the curve and ran into a telephone pole. Thank goodness it was a telephone pole and not one of my children, but it is a safety issue. I have also been there as cars have been streaming by. You count 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're up to 20 cars. I guess Google Maps perhaps that day said, oh, there must be a little congestion, I'm going to reroute. My concern is about the rerouting. I have no particular concern about the townhomes, but I am deeply concerned about the safety. Thank you very much.
Who'll be next?
My name is Guy Rorba. I live at 1147 Jenkins Drive, and I urge you to not approve this cut-through. It strikes me as a uniquely bad idea. If you look at your map, you realize Owens, there's not even a corner. It's like a pinball shoot where you just go whoosh. People are already running the stop signs at Owens and North Cedar Brook, because that's where you get access down to Hickory. All of my children bicycle to school and back every day. This just strikes me as like an obviously bad idea. Thank you.
Nice sound effects. Who will be next?
My name is Miriam Youngblood. I live on 729 North Cary Drive with my mom, my dad, and my brother. And every day when I go to the bus stop, I have to go past a blind curve. I live on a circle, and it's basically, my house is on the other side of the circle from the bus stop. And any way I go, I have to pass a blind curve. And I've seen cars that are supposed to be going 25 miles an hour and coming into the multi-purpose lane, cutting through at like 40, and it's concerning me. And I'd like to see some speed bumps, some more traffic signs to remind people, and some reflective bump stickers on the multi-purpose lane, and maybe a sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you. There's been a number of comments about speed bumps, and I would like to encourage you, no matter what the council does tonight, if that's something the neighborhood's interested in, we do have a procedure and a process for that. And please contact me, contact your council representative, contact the city manager's office, and they can share that information with you. Yes, sir.
So my name is Art Sullivan, and I live at 204 North Cedar Brook Drive in Auburn. And, I'll echo all the neighbors' comments. I think they pretty much summed it up. One thing you'll note that, where I live is a lot of people wouldn't consider it Cary Woods, even though we consider it one big neighborhood, right? In the history of our area is Cary Woods grew. And most of these people that have been up here tonight are in the head estates, Owens, Jenkins, Hickory, in that area. Well, I live out on North Cedar Brook, so we come all the way out to college, and you can imagine coming off college, the traffic, the cut through that we have now is horrible. My wife is sitting in the back of the room, and I wouldn't want to get her up here and have her start talking about some of the times on an everyday basis we stand coming or going in or out of the house and see somebody bottom out coming down Cedar Brook from Hickory, where they cut through coming from Donahue they come around Cary to Hickory and come up to North Cedar Brook. So we feel real strongly that this cut through would increase that dramatically from what's already happening. It'll just change the cut through a little bit and probably just, triple it, the traffic coming through there. But we can sit on our back deck and listen for the cars coming down that hill on North Cedar Brook, and when they bottom out, because they're going 40 or 50 miles an hour down that hill in a residential neighborhood already, safety is a huge concern. We've seen our neighbors' dogs get hit by cars several times. We've seen a lot of stuff happen over there. We've seen people almost get plastered by a car. And, I highly encourage you to really consider it. I stood up here many years ago, and we had a crime issue back, it's probably been 13, 14 years ago, and we had an extremely long council meeting as a result. And one of the council members, Mr. Dowdell, recommended we start a neighborhood watch in the area, which we did, and the mayor is a part of that, and a lot of these people up here tonight are a part of that, and we've got a real vocal area. I've received, we started the neighborhood watch, so I get a lot of emails and we blast them out to everybody. We've got about 400 people on that watch, and I can't tell you how many emails that I got today. Some of them I couldn't even read because I had so many, because we sent the information out about the council meeting tonight, and I probably got 50 emails from neighbors that said they were out of town or had another engagement that wanted to be here. So I would just echo their sentiments to that. It's a real concern. And by the way, the crime issue, when Tommy Dawson was the chief, we met with them and we got all that stuff under control. And I think part of that was kind of shoring up the neighborhood and getting people aware of things. And of course, the roundabout, I believe that helped a little bit, back at Cary Drive where the cut through is from Donahue. So highly encourage you to really think about it and think about those families, because there's a lot of families in our area and a lot of concerns. So thank you.
Who'll be next?
Good evening, Mayor, Councilman, and women. I live at 747 Davis Court. Let me tell you about the conditions over there where we live. We have lack of lighting to walk our streets. We have a bus that comes down on our corner that the kids have to walk 3 blocks to get to the bus. And the bus routes, and they told me that it's out of the way for these kindergartners have to walk from the apartments down to the bus stop in the cold weather. We have no lights where I can walk at night with my wife in order to exercise and everything else. That we have horrible conditions. Please, if you all feel in your heart, come over there and check us out at night. See what we go through. See what conditions that we have. That it seems like that we are forgotten over there in Ward 1. If you all have some time and that you all can come on there and see what we go through, we are a retirement community. We have a lot of old people. We have no safe parks for our children. And we need that too. That we need a place where we can go and sit down and enjoy ourselves and our community. But we don't have that. Now that we had a...
Sir, I hate to interrupt you, but this conversation, particularly right now, is about a cut through at Donahue and Owens Drive.
Mayor, I understand that. You know, but Donahue Drive is right over there across from Ward 1. That traffic is going to have to deal with us too, because we are right across the street.
Okay. There'd be a better, more appropriate time for these comments later on in the agenda, and we'd love to hear every one of them.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Anyone else?
Rob Wilbaum, 1120 Jenkins Drive. I know I sent most of this information to y'all in an email, but I would like to cover some of it just so it's part of the public record. We've lived in this neighborhood for 20 years, great neighborhood. Obviously, I'm speaking in my opposition to this agenda item tonight. The project calls for 21 townhomes and then eventually 40 single-family homes right there to be built adjacent to our property, our neighborhood. Also calls for the connection. I'm opposed to this for 2 reasons. One, I feel like it's mixing of zones. The new zone is DDH, basically a high density with the townhomes anyhow. And then NC 18, neighborhood conservation, and that's intended to preserve the character of existing neighborhoods. So I think by mixing the two, that is detrimental to our part of the neighborhood. I believe property owners have the right to use their land, develop their land, profit from it. However, I feel in this case it's unnecessary mixing apples and oranges, and that development could have a negative effect on the adjacent property owners. So that's my first reason. My second reason, and really the one I'm most passionate about, is this plans for that connection to North Donahue. Connecting the planned development to Owens Road mixes those high densities, but also would connect us to a high traffic area. Owens and Jenkins Road, as you have heard, it's a very quiet and low traffic area. Families out walking. Many of the children walk to Cary Woods because we don't have bus service there because they live too close. So, adding more traffic into that neighborhood when you have all these kids out playing or walking, or families at night walking, I just think it puts them in jeopardy. In the application under Section B, the standard is that the proposed shall not result in undue adverse effect on adjacent properties or affect the character of the neighborhood or traffic conditions or other matters affecting the public health or safety. I think connecting Cary Woods to North Donahue does create an adverse effect on adjacent properties, and also would change the character of the neighborhood in that it would increase traffic, make the neighborhood less livable, and also be a public safety risk to our kids and families. In the application, it was mentioned by staff that provided connections to Owens Road will provide Cary Woods residents access to Donahue. I'm not sure that anyone Cary Woods was talked to about that, and thank you, but no thank you. It's not a connection that we want, it's not a connection that we welcome, and it's not something we agreed to. Cary Woods residents don't want this connection, we don't want the increased traffic, and we do not want to become a cut-through neighborhood. I understand the importance of connectivity in the city and can appreciate, trying to ease traffic and things like that, but I don't think this solves that problem. It doesn't make sense to me connecting a established, built-out neighborhood. If we had 100 home sites in our neighborhood that still were going to be built, I might understand that a little bit better, but I don't know how many we have, but I would venture it's maybe less than a dozen. I'm not really sure. The last thing I want to know is that connecting North Donahue to Owens Road, I feel it's unnecessary for this project to move forward. The developer did not want this connection. They did not ask for the connection. They have original drawings that did not show a connection to Cary Woods. It's already, as Art said, it's kind of a speedway already. It's already a problem. The developer has a design for this development that does not include connecting Owens to Donahue. The developer and the residents of the area agree that by not connecting Owens to Donahue, that both the developer and the residents can be happy. It's my request that this council denies this proposal in its entirety, or at least approve the project with the condition that the project not connect to Owens Road, therefore not having a negative impact on the adjacent properties or the Cary Woods neighborhood. Thank you.
Who'll be next?
Oh, I didn't intend on doing
Can I
this.
go? I'll be real short.
Throw me a cake.
I'm Laura Henry. I live at 1201 Jenkins Drive, right near the cut-through. I oppose the cut-through. I agree with everything that everybody else has already said.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. You expect me to upstage that? I'm here basically,
Name and address for the record, please.
excuse me, I'm sorry. I've been in court all day and my brain's fried. Mark Tippins, 1157 Jenkins Drive. Mr. Wellbaum and I and several others fought this battle before council a few years ago. Different texture somewhat. Some of you remember our futile efforts to combat Walmart as they were coming in, and it didn't seem like there was much justice from City Hall. Now I'm going to say this. What then Councilman Anders and Mayor Hams said about the development has been true. I want to commend them. I want to honor both Bill Ham and Councilman Anders, then Councilman Anders, because what they said that Walmart said they were going to do, they've done. They haven't come out there before 6 o'clock in the morning with their trucks. They stop about 8 o'clock at night. They've been courteous neighbors. I don't have anything bad to say about the Walmart, except that my wife spends too much money there. Now, don't go home and tell her that, Ashley. But since I pointed at Ashley, I want to talk about Henry and George. Henry and George are my two little buddies. They're 9 and 3. Y'all, this cut-through doesn't need to happen for these kids. It ain't gonna bother me, to be honest with you. I'm gone 9 hours a day, and a lot of times on the weekend. It's not gonna bother me, but it's gonna bother these young families. I'm not gonna get up here and insult your intelligence. Y'all are capable business people, smart people, except for Brett Smith.
I agree.
He's a lawyer, and that is automatically a sign of limited intelligence.
Second that.
He knows I love him. Y'all, as I was sitting out in the easement behind my house last night, I was trying to whack think about how I could wax eloquent with you, and I thought, I can't wax eloquent. I'm just going to talk Bubba to you. There's a west side and there's an east side of the easement, and it's a separate entity. You've got head estates, and you've got this proposed piece of property. It's I think it's still owned by the Owens Family Limited Partnership. I don't have any problem, and Brett will tell you this as a real estate lawyer, I don't have any problem with anybody developing their real estate. I want them to make a profit. I'm a capitalist to the utmost extreme. But in being a capitalist, we have to balance the equities, and you know what that means. We've got to make sure that Henry and George can still go back in that easement and play. And they can run up and down there and hoot and holler with me, and Laura can get out there at 5 o'clock in the morning. She's a nut. She gets out there at 5 in the morning with coffee and has her quiet time. Can't imagine anybody getting up at that time in the morning to have coffee. But this is a quality of life issue for so many people. For these kids, it's a safety issue. I want to talk again about balancing the equities. Mayor, you will remember, you and then Mayor Ham sat in my office with Mr. Wellbaum, and you all said you would, of course it's no longer part and parcel of this conversation, but that we would get a buffer of 25 feet to a green buffer, that was good for the city and it was good for the people. I would respectfully and politely ask as a condition, if you seek to approve this matter, that you put a 25-foot buffer. As I said in my email, I griped, whined, complained, and did a few other things with Mayor Anders and then Mayor Ham. Neither one of them promised me that. I do ask you to do this, however. Put your thinking cap on, and you all are all very smart people. Each of you have been in business in some capacity or the other, or managed a governmental agency and been responsible for a budget. When you go to assess a business project, you have to assess the risk and the rewards. The risk should be that of the developer. Now, I've heard Forrest talk about the 2.4 per acre density. Well, that's a falsity, folks, and it's not just because Forrest isn't coming up with a falsity, it's an economic falsity of the numbers. Because the falsity lies in the fact that the density would not provide for better than that because of the unbuildable conditions of some of the property. That's the truth of the matter. And then they want to go and they want to put in townhomes behind attached fee simple townhomes, I think, behind these other people's houses, and it's not behind my house. It won't bother me, but it's wrong. It is just flat wrong for you to approve the townhome situation. If you want to condition the use, do it. Let them do the exact zoning as it currently sits on the books. What's fair is fair and what's right is right. And I think you people are all good and gracious and honorable people, and I ask you I don't have any problem with the development of the property as it is currently zoned, but no conditional uses. Thank you very much.
Who would be next?
My name is Martin O'Neill. Live at 648 Kerry Drive. I like to tell people I come from the eastern part of the state, Northern Ireland. I've been here for about 17 years, so I feel like an old-timer in the Kerry Woods neighbourhood. And actually, looking around, I bump into this guy quite a lot, so it's finally nice to know what he does. My dog wants to eat him every time he gets out of his truck. But I'm looking around the room and there's a lot of other faces I'm seeing tonight, and I've been very fortunate. I've been there for so long. I've seen a sort of a generational shift in that neighbourhood. When we moved, we rented first on, I think it was South Cedar Drive, and sort of fell in love with the fireflies and the azaleas, the camellias, all of those things over the course of the year. Decided we were staying in town. Paperwork's in order, don't need to worry about that. and bought a home. And we've been there for, as I've said, well, quite a long time. But about 2008, the economy tanked. When we moved in, it was very much a retirement community. And I referred to it as geriatric central. I mean, not to be rude, but when you bumped into folks walking around the neighborhood, they were of an age. A lot of them passed on, unfortunately, and they were very good friends when they did. And a lot of others moved on to retirement homes. And for the longest time when the economy tanked, a lot of those homes sat sort of vacant and didn't sell. And it took quite a while for them to sell. And over the last 5 years, I've watched all these young people out and around the room here all move in. And again, my dogs like to eat them too in the morning. But the transformation has been phenomenal. And I've been fortunate to live all over the world and live in some absolutely phenomenal places. But I've never come across anywhere quite like Kerry Woods in Auburn. It's got character. It's got well, let's talk about the beautiful external environment, the trees, the shrubs, everything that makes it original. It's just a very, very nice place to live. And I deal with the motor speedway every day. My dogs deal with the motor speedway every day. And the roundabout that someone spoke to a little while ago, I don't know how many times I've been almost wiped out on that roundabout. So I know what a roundabout's for. I just wish they would instruct people on how to use it. Yield means yield. Stop. Let others have right of way. But, development's wonderful. And I've seen a lot of development in this town in the time that I've been in it. And I'd like to see an awful lot more, but the right type of development. There's a little thing going on in the city right now. You probably see it on garden lawns. And they talk about don't hotel in my neighborhood. And when they're talking about development, they're looking the right type of development. There's a little thing called authenticity. And that neighborhood right now stands for authenticity in this city. A lot of these young people have bought homes because it stands for authenticity. I think if you allow the development as proposed and you allow that cut through, you're going to see a lot of these kids who bought these homes with promise and hope in mind, raising families and everything that goes with it, up sticks and move right back out. And I would hate to see Kerry Drive become what it was in 2008 to 2010. So I'm naturally going to oppose it. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to find out what this guy does. I'll go knocking his door. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who'll be next?
I don't know if I'm the last speaker, but this is not the best. So
there's at least one more behind.
There must be someone else. Yeah.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Name and address for the record.
Sure. I felt like he was about to get there. Name and address, please.
Let me just say I am not experienced in
That's okay. We're a patient group.
Give and takes of this nature.
Good.
But I guess my qualification might be that I'm almost. Yes. My name. Let me think. No. Jim. Yeah. Jim, J-I-M. Who am I giving it to?
Right there.
Oh.
Yeah.
My name is Jim Guin, G-U-I-N. Not a real common around here. Guin. Okay, G-U-I-N. I already said that. 1211 Owens Road, Auburn, Alabama, 3683.
All right, go.
Anything else I need to put on the?
No, you're good, man.
Perfect.
Okay, good to go. I'll try to pick up speed as I go along. If not, just cut me off. So we built our house on Owens Road in 1978, and we have lived there ever since. And I did do some math here, and I found out that's over 40 years that we've lived on Owens Road. It's been a great 40 years, and I'm just so happy to live there. Auburn is a great city. I think you guys do a great job. I think we got the best government going that I know of in Alabama. And
hold on just 1 second. Caitlin, did you get all that?
Yeah. But really, I'm serious. I've looked at some things like that. And anyway, over the 40-year period, as you know, it's always been a very quiet, nice, family-oriented. We raised our daughter there. She went to Kerrywood School, etc., and it worked out very well. And so I guess I'm opposed to the cut-through, as everyone else that's spoken so far has been, and everyone I've talked to has been. And I would like to see the neighborhood keep its current quiet, traffic-free, more or less relaxed area without a lot of traffic. Now, I will point out that the low traffic level is especially needed in Cary and Owens because there are absolutely zero sidewalks except for a small section of Cary Drive. And what this means is that everyone, including myself, I walk about 3 miles a day or so through Cary generally when I can, and you have to walk in the street, on the roadway. Now, Cary is very curvy, and there's lots of blind curves because over the 40 years I've lived there, the azaleas and other bushes have grown out almost and maybe a little bit encroached into the roadway. So you can't see around that curve or over the hill. And oftentimes I have come around there and there are people, and when 3 or 4 people walk, they don't tend to walk in single file. It's just not, I guess, the army or something. And so they walk side by side. And so they're walking side by side, and that comes out pretty much almost at least halfway across your lane of traffic. So it's a somewhat scary proposition. And therefore, increased traffic would be a detriment to their getting their exercise. My second point is that I read the rationale for the extension of Owens Road put forth by the Planning Commission, and it seems to be founded on a principle that increased connectivity, maybe I don't understand it, but increased connectivity is always better. That seems to be the principle that it's based on. Now, to me, I was a professor. I'm not now, but I was. So for 35 years, we called that sort of thing an assumption. And now, if we assume that that's true, then obviously you want is the maximum number of connections for every neighborhood, if that's a true statement. But I would have to question that increased connectivity for any neighborhood is always better. I would have to question that, I guess. And so I think while that might have merit, we can't always just blindly invoke that principle without giving it some serious thought and consideration. And so that's what I would ask you to do regarding that. I believe that many residents in Auburn, and I'm not, it sounds like I should be very familiar with Auburn since I've lived in it for about 40 years, but I don't know all of the outlying areas, but I do know that a lot of them have, as Mr. Dawson said, one entrance and an exit. He even put them together. But even if you had one entrance and one exit, that would be not too bad. But I don't know of too many developers of neighborhoods that say, come build a house in my neighborhood, my plot or plat, whatever, because I have 300 entrances and exits. And, you know, so there's got, that principle has to be tempered, I believe. I will point out that the Owens Road neighborhood already has several connecting roads. I can think of 3 off the top of my head that our Owens connects to. And we have a direct connection straight down from where I live, 1 block away, to Shug Jordan Parkway, which, as you know, is a major artery, and I can go all the way around town with that.
Mr. Goodwin, we're really enjoying your comments, but could you come close? Can you wrap it up here pretty soon?
Yes, sir. I appreciate your patience and even listening to me. I think the Donahue traffic will increase in the future because of what's going on out Donahue. So if you were to pass this tonight and connect it, it might work okay for a little while, but then in the future, you just I don't see the traffic lessening. And so, and what you do impacts us for the future. And I'm sorry to take up your time. I guess in closing, I'll just close with the old adage that everybody knows. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I'm happy with it now.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Who will be next? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Carmen Wilder, and I live at 1106 Jenkins Drive. So our house is actually the corner house. It's one house down from the property that hits the dead end from my neighbors. I apologize, I was late because my spouse worked late, and we have 3 children, which I love to tell you about because they're connected to this. So I couldn't just leave them, and you didn't want me to bring them here. So I may speak or repeat some things that some of my neighbors have talked about. I have some questions. They're not, I don't expect anybody to answer them right now, but they're more rhetorical questions that I hope have truly been considered in a very strategic way, in a very thoughtful way. And I echo Mr. Jim, and my main concern with all of this is in connectivity, which I 100% agree with when we're looking at developing a city and becoming a place that people want to move to, but it needs to be thoughtful connectivity. So, one of the things is, really truly what is the reason for connecting Owens Road to Donahue? How will this benefit citizens of quality of life? So I live in Cary Woods. I've actually moved to Auburn in March, April. It's kind of a graduated move. My husband started a job here in February. I had to close out my job. So we moved here, and it was between here and 2 other places that we were considering moving to for a job. And we decided on Auburn because we were told they have excellent schools, and there were the numbers to back behind it. We were told they had neighborhood schools, which was amazing. We were told that there was great things to do outdoors. We were told that the city is progressive. We were told and saw the numbers behind it that the university was an amazing place and really supported the community. And I have felt and lived all of those things in the past, I don't know how it's been, 5 or 6 months, and it has been amazing. And then last week we were told we're just gonna knock out this road. Only 2 of my neighbors actually got notice of this, and didn't seem to be a lot of thought behind, we're building townhouses, we're building this road. I just want to speak on the townhouses for a minute. I don't want to stand in the way of progress. I do question them a little bit, though. I come from a college town that I recently worked for, and I loved it, Mississippi State. And I lived in a wonderful old neighborhood and a wonderful old fixer-upper built in 1947 that I loved and cried when we moved. And then I moved into a house, as people are mentioning, supposedly it's an old neighborhood, it's built in 78, and I'm thinking, this is brand new. There are not so many things to fix here as there were in the other house. And I'm thinking to myself, I just moved from this problem. I lived in an old neighborhood. There was a cut through our neighborhood that was put in. There was promises of sidewalks. There were promises of bike lanes. And you can ask me, Carmen, did it happen? The answer is no, it did not happen. Do I believe it will happen? Now, no. It's been too long. It will not happen. And what happened is that people cut through a road that was supposed to be 25 miles an hour going 45 miles an hour, and it was very dangerous. And my children, we could not walk and run and ride our bikes safely. Here, I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 14-month-old, all boys, and we ride our bikes to and from school every day. My husband commutes to work on his bike most days. A lot of my neighbors, I see them commuting to work on their bicycles as well. I get up 5 or 6 in the morning and run my dog, where I see my friendly other walkers and runners running their dogs. And for once, I can eke out 3 miles just within a neighborhood, or I can run around and then hit college on a sidewalk and go up, and it's amazing. And this road, especially without the promise of traffic calming measures, sidewalks, and bicycle lanes, is not going to provide that. Even if those happen, which I have been burned, I'm concerned that it won't happen if it's not there first, that I won't even be allowed to allow my children to play in the yard, because one of them's gonna kick a ball and run out there and get knocked over by some college student going 45 miles an hour in a place that should go in 25, because that's how fast they go on Cary Drive already right now. Okay, and it's tempting. I have a lead foot too. It's very tempting. So
couple of questions. How will this benefit citizens' quality of life? When looking to attract people to move to Auburn to work or go to school, like myself, what's the city's ultimate goal? How do you want the city to be perceived? So if they haven't already been mentioned, I have a couple of alternative ideas for increased connectivity because I do think it's important. I think increased connectivity should be planned side by side with increased quality of life. So this road connection decreases the quality of life for residents in the neighborhood because it deters residents from walking and biking up and down the street traveling to work and school. Currently, as mentioned, there are no bike lanes. There are very little bike lanes and sidewalks to buffer from cars. It causes safety concerns for children playing outside. Parents are unlikely to let them play out in the yard because of obvious concerns that I just mentioned. I would suggest, this is just one suggestion, extend the road with a bike and walking path only. People that are moving or already live near Donahue, how nice would it be for them to be able to walk and bike into Cary Woods, pop off to Hickory Dickory Park, which is the most amazing park I've ever experienced, and we go every day that it's not 90 plus degrees, which hasn't been lately, but be able to connect, that thoughtful connectivity. People can walk and bike through to get to downtown easily, but they're not roaring through a thoroughfare. So no motorized vehicle access, or make it so that it's only access for emergency vehicles. So there's bollards or semi-permanent structures put up to prohibit actual motorized vehicle to come through. I don't know, now when you tell me townhouses, there are two types of people, at least at Mississippi State, who bought townhouses, and if this is you, it's fine, that's wonderful. But they're parents whose college students are very privileged and they can afford to buy them the townhouse so they can live there. And they're people who buy game day houses. Everybody else doesn't buy a townhouse, I don't think. Maybe if you do, wonderful. So I'm thinking, are there really going to be a lot of families living back there? The single family home? I don't know. But anyway, so if there's actually families there, I don't know where the schools will be zoned for. If they're zoned for Pick and Cary Woods, then that would be fabulous that they have another way by bike and foot to be able to get easily to the schools and safely to the schools. In fact, I would wonder, this should be a consideration for all neighborhoods to increase their quality of life and connectivity without increasing traffic and potential dangers associated with increased traffic in neighborhoods. We don't want traffic in neighborhoods. People don't want traffic on campuses. Everywhere that I see cities and universities, they're moving towards pedestrian friendly, and this is far from pedestrian friendly. So my last thought is progressive cities should be thinking and looking ahead in their planning on and how new zoning and roadway design, so where the roads are built, predicting through actual research how that's going to affect traffic flow, controlling it with different measures, how will it affect all citizens' quality of life and increase connectivity rather than making it difficult for people to live comfortably and jamming up neighborhoods. Several of the people who have lived here for a while have commented to me that this is actually already a problem for Richland Elementary because they have a huge busy road that's knifing through the neighborhood and none of the kids there can walk and bike to school. So, that's really problematic. I would hope that Auburn is a place that we continue to stay for a while and some place that we see more people biking and walking, a more robust public transit system where people could, if they live on the outskirts, they could commute to a point and ride in, so that decreases traffic everywhere. It helps with pollution. It's better for people's quality of life. You save in so many ways. I would like to support my tax dollars for those types of things rather than things that, in my mind, haven't been well thought out. I'm not a city planner, but they haven't been well thought out. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you. My name is Todd Shipman, 231 South Cedar Brook Drive. I'll make it brief, and I appreciate the time to speak. I just wanted to mention, moving here several years ago, one gentleman spoke about, watching people go on North Cedar Brook, and my family, my daughter and I and my wife, we like to walk South Cedar Brook, go around, hit North Cedar Brook, and yes, there's already a lot of traffic traveling quickly there. And when we first moved there, I'm always the one getting my daughter off on the school bus in the morning, and there's a lot of buses coming through in the morning, and people are hurrying to work and they're driving way too fast. And I'm bringing all this up to say I knew and I was supportive of adding Pick Elementary But I knew that that would also give me a lot of concerns because now we had more kids walking up the street, biking up the street. We also have kids waiting for the buses in the morning, and the buses are coming through. And so seeing that increase with that is naturally going to see increases on if we open up the connectivity that you're talking about, the connection. And I still think it's not just going to be limited to that end of the neighborhood. I think people will be connecting over through North and South Cedar Brook to hit college as well. So having seen that, even with the addition of a school, which I support, and it's a wonderful school, being there, adding extra concern for children's safety and for traffic in the morning, I'd like to add my voice to speak against adding the connection over there. Thank you.
Thank you. Who'll be next?
Hi, my name is Bay Kelly. I'm at 1211 Jenkins Drive. I often get Jim's mail. I just want to throw my voice into the opposition of the connection. I have a daughter who bikes with many other people's children here. We've seen that traffic. I know I was told by the Planning Commission that there's a sidewalk plan in place. I tried to find that sidewalk plan. I couldn't find it. But something tells me it isn't going to extend all the way up into our little wing of the neighborhood. And it's a really busy wing of the neighborhood. So there are some really great ideas. I'm grateful to everyone in the neighborhood who's shown up, and I'm grateful for your time. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Sophia Wilamowska. I live at 533 Owens Road. I would like to echo the statements of all of my neighbors. I'm also against the connectivity issue. And when I looked at the proposal, the statement, the proposed use and proposed location shall not result in a substantial or undue adverse effect on adjacent property, the character of the neighborhood, traffic conditions, parking, public improvements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, and I saw that and I'm just like, how do they know? One of the things was that there's no data there, and we've had cut-throughs built in the city, and it has increased traffic. We know that that's going to happen, and we don't want that. But the other thing is, a few years back, I live right there where that cut-through is going to be built. I mean, it's right there. And, we always thought of it as a dead end, right, where they want to build that street. And it used to, it's kind of hilly, and it used to be open. And one of the problems that we had was that we had crime. We had break-ins because people could very quickly get away. It's in the woods. It's an area that maybe is not as frequently patrolled, and we had a lot of break-ins. And we got together, and a gate was put in. There is data. After that gate was put in, our crime, when there was some kind of stop measure placed, our crime decreased. So we have data on the fact that when that area was opened up, we had higher crime rates. So that was something that Councilman Dawson pointed out at the beginning, and something that I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
My name is Bruno Ulrich, 1518 Stewart Circle. I live way across town from this site. 46 years ago, I graduated with degrees in landscape architecture and urban planning. I was hired by the City of Columbus to be the land planner. And the thing that I carried with me from school in the 1960s on through was connectivity, connectivity, connectivity. Connect every street you can in any new subdivision, regardless of the character or the quality of the housing, period. Well, I did that time and time again, and eventually I got called into the mayor's office, in the city manager's office, sat down, time and time again. Those are simple times. The little planning commission, sophisticated planning commission, or other commissions. But they sat me down and said, Bruno, you need to learn a few things about this area. You need to learn a few things about get some common sense. So I slowly learned, and I said, and I worked up through the ranks. I said, okay, what I need to do is talk to the police department, need to talk to the fire department, need to talk to the ambulance folks to see whether or not we need to connect this section of the subdivision or this section of a development to each other. And that's what needs to happen. I don't see that. We planners can make all the judgments in the world about how nice it would be to connect. It goes back to the 1950s when the subdivisions first started developing in the suburbanization of America. But the people that know whether or not something needs to be connected are that guy right there and the others in emergency services. They need to be contacted.
Who will be next?
Gary Cantini, 608 Owens Road. I am one of the two houses that are actually dead on the dead end here. There's actually 3 houses when you cross the dead end from Jenkins. I will reiterate what was just mentioned a couple of speakers ago and what Mr. Dawson said earlier. We did have a crime wave for quite some time. When the power company put the gate up, our crime rate went way down, and I do not want to see a crime rate go back up again. Second of all, the speed to cut through is just going to create problems. One thing the Planning Commission says this is going to be our benefit. Well, as someone who's right there, who even if I could cut through there, make a right on Donahue to go to Walmart, because of the traffic on Donahue, I'm still going to go all the way down Owens Road, make a left on Shug Jordan to go to that neighborhood Walmart. It's just, why would I want to get onto a 2-lane versus a 4-lane? Third, since we're just, all of Owens is going to get busier, but certainly that dead end traffic. If you look how much traffic was 3 houses there, a couple times in and out, UPS, mail, FedEx, whatever, our traffic, at least on that dead end, is going to go sky high, 10 times, 100 times what it is today. We already have problems after football games, people flying up there, especially at night, screeching to a stop at the dead end because they missed the dead end sign just about running into the gate. So if that's happening now without a cut through, I can only envision what's going to happen with a cut through. If by chance this development moves forward, really, quite truthfully, as the character of the neighborhood, I really don't even prefer the townhouses, but as an additional condition other than just not allowing the cut through off of Owens, I would present that as somebody who's going to be affected most by this, if you allow this, we either need a dense forest, bushes, whatever, or a fence to cut down the noise. Just like they put that fence line behind Walmart when they built that to cushion the neighborhood. I think if the townhouses go through with or without this cut through, then we definitely have to have some sort of noise buffer there. As somebody else mentioned earlier, you know, if this goes through, I would not be opposed to have the sidewalk connectivity or a bike lane cutting through for the good of people, but certainly we do not need the traffic going through with motor vehicles. There are times that some of the, as was mentioned, over the years, I've been there 25 years. When I first moved in, I saw a map that showed Owens Road horseshoeing back down to Shug Jordan. So, you know, I knew 25 years ago we were probably going to get something going on here. Even back then, they never proposed a connection to connect the two neighborhoods. But right now, over time, we've had an aging neighborhood, but now we are getting a much more younger people in there. There's a lot of times I'll come home either in the afternoon or the evening, or especially on the weekends, there may be kids riding bicycles and tricycles in the dead end, because again, there's 3 houses there. So it's a good place for the kids when they're trying to learn how to ride their bikes. Perfectly good spot there. They can circle the middle road without having to worry about staying to the right of the lane and not get hit by traffic. So quality of life, the crime, the speed, for all these reasons I oppose definitely the connect through, and maybe even, unless we see some good conditions on the townhouses themselves, I'm not really even in favor of the townhouses themselves. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
Christopher Seth Tuttle, 1242 Hickory Lane. Oppose this cut-through opposition. Personally invite any and every one of you to come down and just see the increase in traffic that's there already. You have to make these kind of important decisions. We have an opportunity to be proactive tonight, and I hope you'll consider this. Thank you.
Who would be next?
Wes Thrash with Foresight Group on behalf of Owens Family Partnership. Just wanted to reiterate something that Mr. Cotton said at the beginning of this meeting. The conditional use request is strictly related to the townhome use and whether that use is in line with existing uses in the area. I do appreciate everyone coming out, being passionate about preserving their neighborhood and their livelihood in the city. As mentioned by one of the citizens who spoke earlier, the developer does not have a preference whether this connection is made or not. The initial site plan that was presented to city staff did not show a connection. We are okay with removing that connection. We are just requesting the conditional use of allowing the townhome use. And I brought a thumb drive with me that shows adjacent properties. I don't know if we can pull that up or if they can see.
That's something the council would like to see?
Sure.
Okay.
Really all this is it just shows where our project is located and some of the adjacent multifamily uses around that area. So we have multifamily right there on Donahue, across, right there on Green Tree Terrace. So kind of the Donahue corridor there, a lot of that corridor is a type of multifamily or townhome use already. And so we're proposing to basically buffer our single-family residential to the north of that and maintain a townhome use along that corridor to kind of buffer the single-family from Donahue. I will agree with what the gentleman said earlier. The property may not allow us to exceed the 5.5 dwelling units per acre due to some areas on there are unbuildable. But I would like to point out that we're currently proposing approximately 2.5 dwelling units per acre, which is well below what the zoning district permits, which is up to 5.5 dwelling units per acre. And even if you look at just the townhome portion, even that portion, if isolated and looked at alone, meets the 5.5 dwelling units per acre.
Thank you. Yep. Anyone else like to speak in the public hearing? Anyone?
Rebuttal?
Yep. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Council, any comments or questions?
I'd like to restate what I said at the beginning. I just don't feel like it's necessary to put the cut through there. I think it would be detrimental to the crime rate in that particular neighborhood, and I'm opposed to having a cut through for sure.
And I also say the same thing. I was looking at this map and just trying to understand, and the townhouses is actually going to be sitting right on Donahue, right, North Donahue. So it's just like having them to come in and out on Donahue without the extra cut through. So the cut through is really, to me, is unnecessary. So I agree with the majority. That cut through is unnecessary.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this conditional use with the condition that Owens Road does not connect to this development.
Second that. Okay. So we do have a motion and a second. Are there any other comments or thoughts? I think it's fair. I think I need to say that this is my neighborhood. I live on the southern quadrant of Cary Woods. I'm not sure if where I live is considered legally Cary Woods, but I've always told people I live in Cary Woods. It is a unique place. It's maybe Auburn's oldest planned neighborhood. It has winding curves and lots of trees. And the Owens-Jenkins Road area is a very unique area that the people have become conditioned to having wide open spaces and safe roads for their children to live and play on. I believe that making this cut through there would be very detrimental, particularly to those people who live closest to where the cut through is. And ultimately, it would be difficult, I think, for Cary Woods for more traffic to come in to our neighborhood. So I do say very clearly to all of you that that this is personal, but I do think it's in Auburn's best interest for us not to have this cut through.
Ron, I want to ask another question. One of the things that concern me, and I know this don't have anything to do with the cut through, but it concerned me that there's no sidewalks in the area, and I have come through Cary Woods a lot, and I have never ever noticed, and I guess because that's typical on northwest side of Auburn about the sidewalk thing. So I mean, is it that people don't want the sidewalks, or had to be asking for sidewalks? I'm confused.
I can give you a personal. The gentleman spoke earlier. Cary Woods has really kind of changed in the last 10 years. When my family moved there in the late 90s. It was a neighborhood full of an older population, that there wasn't a lot of children there. That has totally reversed itself, especially over the last decade. And there are many children there, and that is a great school, and it's becoming, it's getting a new building now, and there are lots of kids that are walking around there. And so I think for the new Cary Woods, it's certainly something to consider. Yeah, but I don't know, you were pointing, Megan, I don't know if you...
I think there's been a lot of questions tonight about sidewalks in neighborhoods, and I think one of the important things is there was a shift that was not popular at the time that it was made, that they're required in new subdivisions, and while that does not help our older subdivisions, a lot of strides have been made over the years, especially with connectivity to schools. A lot of mention tonight of Pick Elementary, and there's been changes to sidewalks on North College and so on. There is, if you have further questions, I'll have the city engineer address, but I think it's neighborhoods can petition for sidewalks. The city has limited funding where we go back and put sidewalks in neighborhoods and make connections, but what we focus on first and the priority is routes to school and routes that are the most beneficial. There has been small sections, and yes, the neighbors have indicated tonight there's very limited sidewalk in this vicinity, but a lot of that has to do with age of subdivision. The very things that make it charming are also the very things that, by its age, did not require that happen. And there's sometimes some notion in public hearings that other neighborhoods got them and the city paid for them. And I want to be clear that sometimes the city does pay for connections, or we get grants that in the newer neighborhoods where they exist, they were paid for as part of the subdivision construction by the developer, and then and in the end, the homeowners who purchased property there. But there is a manner in which you can petition the city for sections, and why we couldn't do the entire neighborhood at once, that can be considered and looked at if the neighborhood petitions. Just the same with the traffic calming items that have been mentioned.
Meg. All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or comments from the council? All right, so Ms. Witt, would you?
I have one.
Sure, go ahead.
This is an important document. I appreciate you sharing this petition, because there's lists and lists of people who live with us. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that.
Ms. Whitten, would you repeat your motion one more time, please?
Certainly. I'd like to move to approve this agenda item, conditional use for the townhomes, with the condition that it does not connect to Owens Road.
We do have a second on that, okay? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that motion carries, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, we still have a council meeting we're continuing on with. If some of you'd like to leave, please do that quietly, but we do have maybe a little bit left to go.
Mayor, would you like me to continue, or wait a minute?
Let's just wait 1 minute, please.
Well, he's out tonight.
Okay, Ms. Crouch?
Item 10B is a resolution that would authorize the execution of a non-binding letter of intent and lease with Orange Auburn 3 LLC, and further authorizes the expenditure of up to $1 million from the general fund to relocate and renovate the Colors House. A public hearing is suggested.
At this time, we'll open the public hearing. I'll ask you to please come forward and give your name and address for the record.
My name is Mary Norman. I live at 747 Wire Road. I am also president of the Auburn Heritage Association, and I represent 300 members of our members. Over the last few weeks, we have a Facebook page, and we have received over 8,000 hits on a Facebook page, primarily in favor of moving this house. Some people think this is just an old house. Why save it when you don't save others? For over the century, the Colors family contributed much to the Auburn community. Many times when the college did not have funds to complete a building, local residents, like the Colors, contributed. There were 3 brothers involved in the Colors construction company: Hull, J.A., nicknamed Todd, and William A. They are responsible for building the following buildings in Auburn: Sanford Hall, Smith Hall, Comer after it burned in 1921, the old vet building, poultry department, the Theta Chi fraternity, which later became Dorm 12 and was torn down, Alumni Hall, Ramsey Hall, Duncan Hall, Ross Chemical, Mary Martin, which was a Carnegie Library, Textile Building, the President's Mansion, the Women's Quad, Dorms 1 through 4, Drake Infirmary, now torn down, the Bank of Auburn, and many houses still standing in Auburn and Opelika. The barn across from the Colors house housed the largest wooden lathe in Lee County. Thus, many of the large columns and gingerbread for those buildings were crafted there. They were involved in agricultural experimentation as exhibited in the Colors rotation. They have already torn down the William A. Colors house on South Gay. This Colors house is the second where Hull Colors lived. The other is a 2-story house behind the President's Mansion, which was built by Todd and is where his nephew, Alpha Colors, lived. For a family that has contributed so much to a community, it is a true shame these houses of tremendous historical significance architecturally are to be demolished to the ground. This is the gateway to Auburn. This is the first look in Auburn that has a sense of place as you come into town. And you as city council members have an opportunity to save this structure. It qualifies for the National Register in 2 ways. Architecturally, because of the way it is built, being an 1893 structure which is totally restored in 1983, and historically because the family who not only built and lived in it gave so much to the Auburn community. Many people say, well, it should have been put in a historic district. That was tried in 2000, and again a few years ago they tried to put it in a preservation type zoning area. But the city took it out of the university services zoning and put it in new zoning. The 75-foot allowance to go up that many stories is the why this property sold. So in essence, the city is responsible for allowing the sale of this property, making it more attractive to out-of-town developers. From this point forward, the city must take stock in what it has done to make these valuable historical resources more attractive to developers. And we are to lose every aspect of what has made Auburn the loveliest village. We aren't a village anymore. It's not that we don't want to change, we want responsible change. We don't want to lose our entire identity just because out-of-town developers seize the opportunity to make money off of college students. There's going to be a time that the city cannot meet the needs of all this new development. We need responsible development in Auburn. As far as this house is concerned, the city saving it would be a tremendous statement to the citizens that you do care about Auburn's history. Thank you.
Who will be next?
My name is Ab Connor. I live at 281 Greystone Lane. And 35 years ago, we purchased this property from a man in Maryland. At the time, it was actually a contingent contract on it to put a convenience store gas station on the property. And actually, Mayor Dempsey is the one that brought it to our attention, and she and the council kept it in abeyance until we could purchase it, and with the idea of restoring the home and building 22-bedroom apartments around it, which we did. And so anyway, personally, I have a lot of hours into the restoration part of the project and in building the apartments. And we even salvaged some brick from Brown Hall to use around the apartments and the house, the 1890s house. So I have a lot of fondness for it, and I'm really proud that we were able to do it and save it for 35 years. Once it was under contract, I spent a lot of time trying to find a location for the house and run up the cost of moving and restoring it. And it is very difficult because of the fireplaces that go from the ground through the roof. And because they would have to be taken down, and the mess that it would make inside the homes in particular doing that. And the height of the home would probably require taking the roof off, and then you're vulnerable to weather and other things. So it's really a difficult thing. And I just really am here to say I'd love to see it saved, but I do recognize the difficulties in doing so. And unless you have a location and a real purpose or need for it, then it's kind of hard to see how spending that kind of money would be in the best interest of the community. But y'all got a tough decision to make, and I don't envy you in doing so. But I just wanted to give my thoughts on it as well.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. Who would be next? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Susan Melton. I live at 1548 Woodley Circle, and I would like to echo the statements made by Ms. Norman about the preservation of the home in some fashion, if at all possible. That it just seems to me, as someone who has moved back into the Auburn area in the past 5 years, so much of what I remember of Auburn is gone. It's been replaced by high-rise student apartments of a totally new type of design that is not what you think of when you think of a village or a small town like Auburn. And the Colors home represents one of the last remaining structures of an older era that does mean so much to Auburn. I know it would not be an inexpensive measure to move it. However, if there is some way that it could be moved, I think that it would be worth it in the long run. And I think you have to think of the long run here, of preserving history, memories, and honoring the people who put it there and did so much for this community before we ever got here. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Who would be next?
Linda Dean, 474 Scott Street. Tonight, this city council will determine the fate of a landmark historical house associated with one of the most important families in the city's and the community's history. It is pointless to dwell now on what has led to this dilemma. Instead, consider the following. Some council members have expressed reservations about spending taxpayer money to save this house, which can be moved for approximately $200,000. Yet several council members have also told me that they have received about 80 emails expressing support for saving the house, and only a handful opposing the expenditure. This message is clear. And Ms. Norman also mentioned the support that she had received through her Facebook page. Every expenditure is taxpayer money. Tonight, you approved an expenditure of nearly $175,000 of taxpayer money for a flower bed on South College Street. This was item 8C5, $175,000 for something temporary because plants die, but not $200,000 for something permanent. The city has the money. Revenue exceeded projected income last year, so a lack of money is not really the obstacle. The building has been well maintained through its 125-year history. Thank you, Mr. Connor. Thank you. To welcome residents and visitors to a key crossroads of university and town. Soon that site will be an empty scar. The developer, who has spent about $12 million to assemble properties at that location, has been very tight-lipped about his plans, but there are probably people sitting in this room who may be aware of what may replace this historic building. Why is there no excited buzz about this project? Is it because something so mediocre and ordinary and unneeded is going to replace something significant and cherished? The destruction of this house will carve a deep wound in the hearts of alumni and residents alike. But moving the house and using it, for example, as a space in Town Park for next month's Saturday markets, would help heal that wound. In 2015, a petition signed by over 2,000 people was presented to that city council asking for a slowdown in the construction of student housing to truly assess needs. That city council ignored its citizens' request. And now, although Mayor Anders didn't, thank you. Now, 3 years later, our city is looking at a surplus of housing as reported by student property managers citywide. The point of this reminder is to ask you to please pay attention to your citizens' request. Mayor Anders was one of the 3 council members who wanted the slowdown or moratorium not to be pulled from the agenda that night, and that vote became part of his campaign platform. City and press statements and an informal online survey through misleading wording have left the impression that the cost of moving the house would be $1 million, with additional costs incurred in restoring it. There is no doubt in my mind that this erroneous impression has been a factor in some people's opposition to moving the house. They have been astonished when I have told them that the moving costs are estimated at about $200,000 and not $1 million. In light of the considerations above, as well as Ms. Norman's statements, many in the community support this project. It would be an asset in one of our parks, and the city can afford it. It is indefensible for this council to vote no on saving this house for public enjoyment for decades to come. Thank you.
Who would be next? Anyone?
Ryan Casadvan, 801 South Gay Street. I spoke a couple weeks ago in opposition to the city using public funds for this purpose, and I'll say it again like I did last week. It's not in opposition to what these folks are wanting to do. I respect the fact that that's something that's valuable to them. However, I do not feel that it is in the overall interest of the community to spend those tax dollars to move this building. Ms. Norman stated that it's the, kind of the entrance to the campus and all that kind of stuff, and I think that's arguable, but if we take it and move it, then it adds no value as the entrance to the campus. It serves no purpose. I'll also say, and please correct me, Brett, if I'm wrong, that there is no monument on this building now, honoring the significance of this building. Is that correct? I mean, is there anything outside that says, this is the Colors building, this is this great building that we all revere? Is there anything there? It seems like the building's been hiding in plain sight for 120 years, and now there's some fella who wants to take it down, and everyone's scrambling to save this building that has some newfound importance. And not knowing the Colors' significance in the community, I think it's interesting. They certainly did a lot of things, but if they were alive today, many of the people that are supporting honoring them would be in opposition to a lot of the things they did. They would be saying that Sanford Hall is too tall or what have you. So I think it's very ironic that these people who are always against construction now want to honor these guys who were local builders and built a lot of houses, because it's contrary to their typical assessment of people who build for a living. So I would just ask that you guys refrain from using public funds to do something that a handful of folks seem to have an interest in spending a lot of money for, and just refrain from doing so. And Mr. Parsons is my council member, and I've talked to him many times, and I've used the analogy before. We're a town of 60,000 people, and I've heard from a couple council people, well, 50 people have emailed me, 70 people have emailed me. What that is telling you, what it is screaming so loud to you, is almost no one cares. People who don't have an opinion or don't care or don't want to get behind something, they don't let you know. The people that are passionate about it, those are the ones that come out in support of things vocally and will spend the time to do so. But the overwhelming silent majority of people, they don't want to spend this money for this, and you typically won't hear from those folks. So thank you.
Sir. Anyone be next?
Ray Huff, 1438 Varner Avenue. I was not planning on speaking tonight and had no desire to speak. We've been managing the property for Mr. Connors for quite some time before he sold it, and then a little while after that. Just so that the prior speaker will know, there is a marker right by the front door of the house. The house was dedicated several years ago by the Auburn Preservation League, and there is a plaque on the front of the house that says the Colors Connors House as a historic. Doesn't mean any is on a register as a historic site for Auburn. There was I think the Preservation League had a huge meeting that night. There were well over 100, 200 people there that recognized it, that congratulated Mr. Connor for his work and his preservation of the house. Just to set the record so you all know. Thank you.
Sir, thank you. Anyone else?
Barry Cantini, 608 Owens Road. I had not originally planned on speaking on this, but having heard some of these comments, especially the gentleman who was against this, to me, if the city were to move this, and I don't know if you even have a place for it yet, but as the city continues to grow, the city offices need more spots. And maybe somewhere down the line, if we move to somewhere, maybe one or more city departments could move into it, and therefore it would be a benefit of all the citizens, not just the handful of people that somebody was mentioning here. So like I said, I think we should look at this. Yes, I realize spending this much money may slow down road repairs, sidewalks, whatever else, but I think in the growth of the city, I mean, I've been here 32 years. I came in 87. I see go down up and down College Street, how many buildings are gone, how many residential houses have been torn down for stuff. And if there's any way we can save this, and whether it's used for a meeting location, whether it's used for a city department or two, I think we ought to seriously consider it to keep some of what is Auburn around. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just bringing us out of the woodwork. I'm William Dean, 474 Scott Street.
There've been a few comments by several people how the unimportance of these houses are. I think I've on several occasions explained to y'all that my dear cousin Ann Pearson and I restored, mostly her money, restored Sunny Slope down on South College, which was also a house built or rebuilt by the Cullis family in 1888. This house, she purchased it and paid nearly $400,000 for the property back in the end of 2013. 2 years later, and $380,000 worth of restoration, it was completely renovated into a structure which is now, at the time we really didn't know what to do with it, so we built it up to institutional standards and commercial wiring codes and electrical, all that, handicap. And she eventually donated it to Auburn University, who is now using it as their Olive Auburn offices and classrooms. So these type structures do have new re-adaptive use. And even though she didn't move it, she spent nearly $400,000 buying it. So, if you started out with moving it less than $400,000, you're up to a point where you could restore it. You have Town Creek Park down there with the Salmons donating a pretty good bit of land there, certainly adequate to put it in multiple locations on it. There has got to be some community use that this structure could be rehabilitated in the $500,000 range to, be functional and be saved. There's no way to save it in its present location. The only other thing I would say is that I have a problem with the city coming and saying, okay, we need to spend $1 million and redo this intersection up here and put pretty brick crosswalks where everybody can say, ooh, pretty brick crosswalks with lights in them and plug-ins for their phones, and then let's do it at the next one, and let's do it at the next one. But yet we can't come up with a couple of $100,000 or $500,000 right now to preserve the house and work on a plan to do something. We build a tennis center and use all our special, $5 million tax plan to finance that. And then you give that money to the school. And so now the city is paying over $500,000 just to pay off the bond issue on that. So there's a lot of things in the city budget where we're just spending $500,000 here and $500,000 there. And not like we've got a lot of $500,000 to spend, but a few $100,000 of seed money up front with a plan would certainly go a long way to preserving some of Auburn's history. So, thank you.
Who would be next?
Parker Lewis, 710 East Sanford. I was not planning on standing up either. Just want to mention a couple things. I know I'm hearing 200,000 tonight. I'm hearing $1 million in multiple places. Quite frankly, as a libertarian, I'm seriously concerned about spending taxpayer dollars on private sector things like this. But if it's $1 million, I've been on the board of several charities locally. I just jotted down a couple things: Boys and Girls Club, Food Bank, Literacy Coalition, Our House, Habitat for Humanity, Lee County Humane Society. If we're going to drop $1 million or $500,000, there's some things we could have, some life-changing things that we're spending this money on, and not a single house in this community locally. So I'm not opposed to historic preservation. A few years ago, I was doing the civil design on the Max Credit Union over there on Gay. There was a blue Victorian house. There was some desire to save the house. Max was willing to be a participant in saving that house, but there was no plan. There's a house that's coming down, but there's nowhere to take the house. There's no group that's organized enough that has any sort of private funding. We've got concerned citizens but we aren't organized. And so it's frustrating to me to once again have another house. We lost 3 houses on Gay where that landowner sold for millions of dollars and didn't set aside any of that $1 million worth of revenue to put it back into historic preservation. So I guess my point is, what's to stop us 6 months from now? You approve this one. What's to stop us 6 months from now for the next time the private sector tears down a house and we come to the public sector to say, hey, we need money to save this? Does Parks and Rec even want this house? Is there anywhere to even put this house? What kind of long-term maintenance are we then going to add into the Parks and Rec budget to maintain this on a public land? There's a ton of questions. I'm not opposed to the Colors House. Didn't know anything about the Colors House until about 2 months ago. I lived down the street from the Colors House for 22 years. So again, I just think if we're going to spend taxpayers' money that's not budgeted, we could find a ton of places to spend it in this town that would be life-changing for the future and not just an honor of the past. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Lindbergh B. Jackson, 814 North College. I've heard a lot of different ideas kicked around, and in the past I've heard some talk about a Rosenwald School. I've heard some talk about an African American museum. We just spent about $750,000 or so on Boykin recently. I'm about to spend some more money. I heard no one say anything about the preservation of the house from the standpoint of possibly a museum in Northwest Auburn. We have a lot of history here in Auburn. We have, as everyone knows, that's lived in the southern states, 244 years of people being held in captivity that has no history in Auburn. Another 100 years of Jim Crow. And if you look around today, in the New York Times, there has been a recent article placed in there about 1619. The people that came to America in 1619, 20 Africans, those were people that looked a lot like me. And as I look around in Auburn today, I don't see anything, hardly. Ebenezer Baptist Church is the one historic marker that's over on Thatch that I attended as a Boy Scout that reflects the history of African Americans. If you're going to spend $1 million, spend $1 million, look around Auburn, look around Northwest Auburn. Think about, if you're going to spend that $1 million, give it back to a community that has gave their lives for Auburn, building of a university and maintaining of a city.
Who will be next? Anyone? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Comments from the council?
Well, I have a comment. I had wrote out a little statement and I walked off and forgot it, but I have no problem with history, none at all. And I don't mind saving this color house, but not at the expense of the city. The gentleman, two of the gentlemen that talked about the history, said the things, the needs in our community, not just Northwest Auburn, because there's other communities that need help that we could use the $1 million for, and that number did come up. It came up in the city council. So the $200,000 is just the move of the house is what I was understood. But to restore the house and get it back in shape and all this, it comes out to $1 million plus. Also, I think there was some money they was talking about where the house is sitting now for rental fees or something, and I don't even think that was included in the $1 million. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. But I just, I have no problem, and I just want to emphasize this. I don't have any problem with saving history, because if I have to go back and look, I look at Boykin, and Boykin used to be an elementary school that I used to go to. And now Boykin, it's there, and I don't want nobody to get this wrong, but we put a medical center inside of an elementary school. So that took away some history from that school. Well, we should have saved the history and put educational sources in Boykin. So saving history is a good thing to me, but not to save a house at $1 million. And I heard this gentleman say, and I hope that I didn't hear him wrong, but, you know, he said it was a fireplace and it's going to take up a lot of the structure of the house on the inside. So, you know, is it really worth moving the house instead of just maybe building a colors house? I don't know, and that's on the city as far as that, but I am opposed to moving the house at the cost of this city.
Taylor? Anyone else on the council?
Mr. Mayor, I've got a statement from Council Member Griswold who emailed me.
Please.
This is from Ward 2 Council Member Kelly Griswold. I wish I was able to deliver my thoughts on this issue in person, but I'm unable to be present tonight. The City Council and the Planning Commission created the atmosphere for this situation. We've basically allowed developers to get anything they want at the expense of the loveliest village. The apartment moratorium was sidetracked, the downtown master plan was changed, and building height limits were juggled. The current council and commission have further contributed to this atmosphere by allowing developers to put beach houses in the historic district. I can't speak for the other council members, but I haven't had a single person say they are happy with what's happening to our downtown or the direction the city has taken. The City Council, past and present, have contributed to this atmosphere, and now we have a chance to correct our trajectory. It's going to cost a lot to say that enough is enough. $1 million is a large number. Consider where $1 million can come from. A rough estimate of water and sewer connection fees for a single 750-bed private dorm is about $750,000. Permit fees net several $100,000 on top of that. That's just for a single one of the many private dorms resulting from our decision to allow developers to build in our downtown. I view an investment to save the Colours House as a correction using funds from earlier bad decisions. Besides the money the city accumulated from developers so far, there are more projects on the horizon poised to take advantage of our city. I do not consider tax money as the source of revenue for the preservation of the Colours House, but instead monies that developers have provided to the city for being allowed to take advantage of existing conditions. Every big developer signs a development agreement stating what they'll do and what the city will do. They all want something from the city, whether it be road closures, airspace for crane operation, sidewalk closures, or more. We don't have to acquiesce to all their desires without demanding things from them, such as funds to offset the negative impacts on our city. Make them earn the concessions we give them. In the near term, projects will have to be reprioritized, but the developer money will continue to flow into the city to counter delays or deferments. I suggest the staff reprioritize planned efforts and certainly hope they'll consider the massive Parks and Recreation Master Plan with a $40+ million plan. Finding $1 million should not be hard. I have received over 120 emails, Facebook messages, next-door messages, and letters on this topic, many more than on any other subject. 88% of those expressing a preference for favouring the saving of the Colours House. The most ardent opponents are those who wish to make money from the city regardless of the impact. We heard from them at the last council meeting, and you likely heard from them again tonight. If I were present, I'd vote for the resolution, and I encourage this council to vote to support the voices of Auburn people and to make the most out of the developers' money. Say enough is enough. Make those who've changed the nature of our city and those who continue to do so fund this worthy project. Kelly Griswold, Ward 2.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else on the council?
Yes, I received a few, over the past few weeks, I've received over 92 emails about the Colours home. Of those 92, 78 were supportive of saving the Colours home. I'm sorry, yeah, 78 were supportive. Although that is a small amount of emails compared to the population of our size, I think it's a good sampling and speaks to what the residents of Auburn want. The cost of moving and restoring this property is a lot of money, somewhere between $700,000 to $1 million. People have argued that the money could be used for other things like additions to our parks, road projects, and etc. However, I believe that is false thinking. At the end of this discussion, if the decision by the council is not to allocate the money to move the house, the council isn't going to say, well, we didn't spend $1 million on that, so let's go spend it on something else. That's not what's happening. The argument that the city will not recoup its money is also not the point. Thinking back over the years, Hickory Dickory Park does not yield a return. Redoing the streetscape at Toomer's Corner does not yield a return. Infrastructure projects like sidewalks, bike lanes do not yield a return. Moving this house is an opportunity to preserve the history of the Victorian time period in our town. I care about saving this home because tearing it down into rubble is wrecking our history. Most of the wreckage will not be salvaged and will go into landfills. I care about saving this home because historic resources are finite and cannot be replaced, making them precious commodities. You can never replicate this home. Once it's gone forever. The woodwork and the craftsmanship of using handmade nails are something I value. I care about moving this home because we are losing our uniqueness in this town, and we need to take a good hard look at the development here. This home is more than a historic structure on the corner of College and Sanford. It is part of the cultural heritage of Auburn. Cultural heritage affirms our identity as a people. Culture and its heritage reflect and shape values, beliefs, and aspirations, thereby defining a people's civic and national identity. It is important to preserve our cultural heritage because it maintains our integrity as people. This home is a part and vital symbol of Auburn's history and love and appreciation of Auburn's past, held not only by the residents of the Auburn community, but by those who, even no longer living in this community, helped to shape the values and character of sweet Auburn, loveliest village of the plain. I will be supporting to save the Colors home.
Thank you, Stephen. Anyone else on the council?
I'm probably going to have several comments, and it may have some questions, and we may have some dialogue or different things like that. I'd like to first off, I'd like to do away with the pretense or the notion that tonight's vote is the end of the decision for the Colors home. Based on the calendar that I'm aware of, it's September 16th or 17th. End of my lease in that office is September 30th. There's an option from my understanding, I've not been privy to that contract, but I believe there's an option if someone takes interest in this home and moving the home before the 30th, that I believe the gentleman, that Mr. Connor that spoke, has the 30-day period that can be done. There's an intense amount of weight and pressure on this council right now. There's laws in this country, there's laws in the state of Alabama, there's laws under our Constitution and our bylaws that talk about property rights. I know everyone hates to talk about that and they get offended and get upset about it, but it's the truth. There's a lot of people in that area. The city came in the early 2000s multiple times and tried to preserve that area. The landowners that were there said no. Some of the most outspoken people about the city spending $1 million were adamant about it not being a preservation area. They were adamant about that. They said that the city, the government, does not have the authority to tell me what's best for my property. Those are facts. That's the truth. And now, City Council, all of us, Mr. Griswold provided a statement, but his seat is empty, all have the pressure and the burden of dealing with this house. Now, here's the problem. We are not a historic preservation commission. We are a city council. We have multiple stakeholders in this community. If our only purview and if our only role or position was to preserve historic preservation, it'd be a no-brainer. The question would be, do we have the funding? Do we have the funds? Is this where we want to allocate those funds? That would be the question. But that's not our responsibility only. We answer to every single member of this community. Every single member, all the stakeholders. If you were at the last meeting, we had 3 organizations that were asking for funds. I and my brother's keeper was here and asking for $60,000. Not regarding preservation, but about the future of the children in this area, about transportation. I'm not making these comments in opposition to preservation. I think there is a point, and it's important in a community to have preservation. But you have to balance it out. As Mr. Tippin said, the fine lawyer that he is, there are equities in our community, and we have to balance out those equities. When we balance out equities, we have to make sure that we're using our resources efficiently, not wasting our resources. One of the jobs, when I ran for city council and talked to my constituents, I said, I will be responsible. I take my fiduciary duty of spending your money to the utmost, because city council, your local government, your state government, your federal government are the only ones that can force you to spend money. Think about that. We have the authority to spend all your money. Is it right? Will we be kicked out of office? Are we going to be reelected? Probably not. We're probably not going to be reelected. But that's a responsibility I carry every single day. And in this decision, it's been the balancing act, because preservation is important. There is no doubt about it. Now, I'd like to dig into a few facts. I've started with this. I've been involved in this. It's very personal to me. This home is extremely personal to me, because that's where I've had my office for the last 5 years. Now, I want to be honest. We've had guests there. I probably would have liked to have more clients there, but we've had good clients there. It's been an honor to be in that home. But I'll tell you, and just to be completely candid with you, we've not had a lot of people just coming over to check the house out. And I understand, and I say that, and I want to appreciate, and I want to say this too, that I'm very thankful for everyone that takes an interest in this. I'm very thankful for everyone who has spoken out about this. I'm very thankful for the folks who stand on one side of this argument or the other. And I'm very thankful for the opportunity for everyone, for their voices to be heard. We've not had a lot of guests, and to me, when I'm thinking about this and as I've been turning this over, I don't know that it's about the Kohler's house, but I think it's more about our image and where we're going forward. And I want to tell you, no matter how this vote turns out, that I've heard every one of your voices, and that I want to do everything that I can to create the town. And I know people will say, it's not the buildings, it's the people. And the other side will say, these are the buildings that I grew up with, and this is what I appreciate, and this is what I know. I appreciate all of those positions. You may not agree with everything or action that I take, but I promise you, I've heard the voices. It sounds like I hear voices in my head. That could be true too. But nevertheless, I hear the importance of preservation. Now, Miss Dean had a great idea, and she posted on Facebook a while back about, hey, look, and I think Mr. Buston had mentioned it before. We've got a memo here that's been prepared that talks about expenses up to $1 million. That doesn't have anything to do with continuing maintenance expenses. That does not have anything to do with the exorbitant terms that we would enter into with Orange Auburn about the short-term period we'd have between October 1st and April 30th. It doesn't even mention those. It looks to be in the neighborhood between $25,000 and potentially $50,000 more dollars that we would spend on that relationship alone. But now I've completely lost my train of thought. Golly, that happens a lot. But my concern with staging, we spend $200,000 on a relocation if the city right now votes to commit to $200,000. Okay? Now, I have, with the hopes of private investment. Private investors, folks private from the community are going to come out and invest. They're going to turn around and they're going to raise the rest of the money. Okay? I would love that opportunity. But here's the problem. We spend $200,000 to relocate the home. Now we have a $200,000 asset that we've spent your tax dollars on that's going to sit with the hopes that we raise money. Now tell me, and everyone in this room could answer the question, what happens when the private sector doesn't raise any money for the difference? Are we, the council, this body, these 9 members, Are we going to then say, well, you know what, $200,000, whatever. We'll just let that asset, the Kohler's house, this discussion, the debate we've had, we're going to let it go to waste. We're going to let that asset waste. Heck no, we're not going to do that, because every single person in this community is going to come up and say, are you seriously going to spend $200,000? One side's going to say, did you spend $200,000 and now you're going to let this ruin? And the other side's going to say, well, if we can't raise the money, someone's got to do with it. So I tell you tonight, council, and I will tell anyone, that if we vote for $200,000, we vote for $100,000, we vote for $1 million, we own this property. There is no question about it. We will be on the hook for the entire price. And that is my concern. This isn't an issue of funny money or expenses. This is people's hard-earned dollars about this home. And I tell you, and there was a question raised earlier about some information I requested. I put out on my council page, I put out a question that said, should the city of Auburn spend up to $1 million to relocate the historic Kohler Connors home? Up to $1 million. Comments welcome. I had 873 votes, 56 shares. It reached 11,000 people. 58% of the people voted no. That was on Facebook. On the Nextdoor app, which, same question, 107 votes, 38% said yes, 62% said no. Not only that, we received a statement from the Parks and Rec Advisory Board because we had proposed moving the property to Town Creek or to Kiesel Park. We received a statement from the board, from the people that were the citizens that we appoint that give us opinions and help us guide our decisions. And they said, it's not an asset. It's not something we want to use. We can't. It's not in our budget. It's not something we can use. I say this not, I just say these are the facts. I am passionate about this. I've been passionate about it. I brought the subject up because I hope and prayed that the private sector would reach out. I set my own private GoFundMe. We've not reached the goal. I want to have this question as a city council member. I want to have this debate and this discussion about the future of our community. That's a very historic home. But when I balance out the equities and when I look at all of the individual taxpayers in this community, I cannot commit to spending that type of money. So in closing, this is not the end of the road. This is the weight that's been put on us. The council has voluntarily taken this conversation on so that we can hear from the community. We voluntarily brought this to the attention. At the beginning of this whole debate, we could have easily said, that's a private transaction, it was sold, they can deal with it, it's their property. But we didn't. This council brought this subject up. From that, I think this community can take from that and understand that we are hearing each of your voices and that whatever happened in the past, this is a brand new council. We are responsive, we are transparent, and we're trying to hear from each and every person. I don't know how else we could prove that more. We voluntarily brought this position up. So that is my position, that is my long-winded deal. I'm extremely passionate about this. I just ask if there's anything that can be done. We've got until September 30th.
Okay. Anyone else on the council would like to make a statement?
I appreciate Ms. Norman's, what she said about the house, and I appreciate Ms. Dean's passion for wanting to say the house. And I really appreciate Mr. Connor for keeping the house as long as he did. He's always been an asset to Auburn and cares about Auburn. I really appreciate what you did to hold on to it as long as you did. But that being said, I can, in all clear conscience, vote to spend $1 million to move a house out to Kiesel Park when we could build a lot of low-income housing and change lives with the number of houses we could build doing it. We could also air condition our school buses. We got kids riding around 100-degree heat today, and we got kids riding school buses, no air conditioning. $1 million would probably put air conditioning in every one of them, I would think, come close to it. So we got things I think we could better spend the money on. And more importantly, I don't know much about building and all that stuff, but I know a little bit about law enforcement. And I'm gonna tell you something, if you don't have enough police officers, it won't show up tomorrow. But not having enough is gonna show up a year from now, 2 years from now. So we gotta spend $1 million. I'd much rather spend on putting more officers on the street, because I'm telling you, we're known as the loveliest village because of our low crime rate, a big part of it. And to keep that low crime rate, you gotta keep the boys and men and women in blue out there working for you day and night. While you're sleeping at night, they're patrolling the streets, protecting you. They're protecting our beautiful town. So if we're gonna spend $1 million, let's spend it in public safety, police department, or I think we could probably build 30 low-income houses, and that would change a young kid's life, to have a house to live in. And like I said, the buses too, I've been contacted by a lot of people, probably more, for more contacts wanting to move the house and city pay for it. But I do respect your opinion on it. I do. I'd like to see the house. I didn't know who the Colors family was. I've been here. I'm a good Lord, let me live next month. I'll be 54 years old. Didn't know anything about it. I lived here Auburn that long. However, my dad educated me on it, and now I know for sure who they are. He took care of that. I brought it up. But that being said, if we had more people like Mr. Connor who cared enough to spend his money and hold on to it, and we put money in the private sector to move it, I'd be out there helping. I'd donate 1 month's salary from this council to help move it, if you could get the people to move it. It ain't much, but I'd give you $500 I get every month for a month to help do it.
Oh, you get $500.
But that's all I can give. I'm just a poor country boy. Grew up in Auburn, and folks good enough in Auburn let me be the police chief for a while, and I really care about the town, but I in all good conscience, I just could not vote to spend $1 million on moving and resetting up his house. It's not gonna be the same house, folks, when you get it out there and move. It's gonna have to cut it in half, like Mr. Connor said, get those big chimneys out of there, and it's just not gonna be the same. And I'm sorry to have to say that, but really I'm not. I think I'm doing what's right. So thank you for giving me a chance to speak.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Tom.
Follow Tommy and deem this the corner of brevity, but you sort of proved me wrong there for just a second. I'll chime in, and I too would love to see I would support the Colors House restoration, but not with public funds. We will mention Mr. Connor again and his efforts through the years to preserve the house. Is a great example of what can be done with someone that owns the house and loves it. It is being offered to anyone that wants to take the house. Sunny Slope was mentioned earlier. That again was a wonderful example of a historical home here in town, saved and restored by private funds. I support that notion. I just can't. I'm in agreement with Tommy. It's just really, really difficult for me to overlook or exclude so many notions that over the last few weeks have been proposed in support of saving this house with public funds. It's funny, it really opens up a lot of conversations the last month or so as we've been rolling this ball around. Everyone has an idea of what to do with $1 million in town. and as we all can anticipate, but I think that I would be in agreement that this particular use would not be what I would deem in the city's best interest.
Let me add, if I may, I forgot to mention, I was contacted by a lady, I'm not going to bring her name over here tonight because she's not here, but I have the utmost respect for her, and she had some good ideas about moving the house, just so that she's watching tonight, I'm sure. To her, I'm sorry. I still respect her opinion, and it was very hard, the decision was hard to make, but again, she knows who I'm talking about, and I appreciate all her efforts on the house.
Mayor, if I may, since I was one of the council members who brought this to the council as a point of discussion, I think it's very important that the reason we did have this come to the council was so that we could elevate this conversation and determine the pulse of what we are here and charged to do, and that is spending taxpayer dollars, and what is the best and highest use of those dollars for the benefit of the good of the whole community. I also had hoped that it would create ignite some passion for the private sector to come out and want to save this house and move it so that it could be preserved. And countless individuals did do that, and countless individuals spent countless time, money, resources in determining whether or not this was the best use of their own personal funds. And each one of those walked away saying, I can't make this work. The university, to whom many of the Kohlers' contributions were made, walked away from this and said, this is not something that we want to be a part of. And that was their opportunity and their right. So I don't think that the city should bear the burden of correcting what many people say is the history of the last 30-plus years of that piece of property. Property rights, as Mr. Smith has stated, are fundamental in this community, in this state, and zoning laws are what they are, and they do change and they evolve. But at the end of the day, I can promise you that Orange, Auburn would have bought that property regardless if it was 75 foot or 45 feet. And that house would not be standing there regardless of if it was university services or not. At the end of the day, we are charged with making sure that we make the best decisions. Preservation, hopefully this challenges those who still have historic homes that are not part of the one and only historic preservation neighborhood that we have in Auburn, which resides in wards 2 and 3, to protect your homes. And there are several people in this audience who have historic homes that are not protected. So, you know, I challenge you to protect your homes and your property. If you think that this is the course of action for the structures that we still have left, I challenge the Auburn Heritage Association to get active and start putting aside seed money for the next house. I mean, we've had countless situations. Auburn Bank had a home, Max Credit Union had a home, Gay Street had 3 homes, this property is a home. All opportunities missed that were not the responsibility of this council. They are the responsibility of the private property owners. And so therefore, the reason I felt very compelled to bring this to this level was so that we could have this conversation, and I'm glad we've had it. And I believe in preservation, but I also believe in property rights, and preservation starts with your own self and your own property, and should not be the responsibility of this government. As I was told by a former council member who was adamant about not being a part of Historic Preservation Commission or district, they know better how to protect their properties than the government. And I think that speaks volumes.
I appreciate y'all's position, and I understand and respect it, Chief Jay. I have a different take on it, and if you'll indulge me, Mr. Mayor, I'll read my statement. In my relatively short time as a city council person, the Culler's House predicament has generated by far the most correspondence. Even as a 2018 candidate, the Culler's House was a frequent point of discussion. I've been in regular contact with concerned citizens and interested parties trying to find a way forward, and I was once optimistic that a solution would emerge from the private sector. However, it seems that such a solution cannot be found, and we're here this evening, and regardless, the Culler's House remains an historically significant structure, and once it's gone, it's gone. And this past year has brought about many changes in Auburn, some of which have been exciting and beneficial, while others have been disheartening and problematic. As talk about what might happen to the Culler's House has spread, I've been contacted by many current and former residents urging me to vote in favour of allocating funds to move it, and I intend to vote to do so, not only because I determine it to be the will of the majority of residents in my ward and in our city, but also because I believe it is the right thing to do. I ran my campaign on the idea that we can and should preserve our city's historic structures and our neighbourhoods, and I feel that the Culler's House is one such structure which should be preserved. However, it pains a part of me to have to vote to use city taxpayer monies for this project because it is expensive, and because the reasons why this Hail Mary pass has come are in part due to a lack of clarity and consensus on how we as a group of citizens address historic preservation. And that lack of clarity and consensus is not due to the absence of engagement and concern. I would venture to guess that returning to old familiar sites strikes a chord in all of us at some level. The Depot, Toomer's Corner, Sanford Hall, they give us a sense of shared experience and shared nostalgia. So aside from clarity and consensus, what we really lack is a mechanism by which we address as a municipal body such concerns. Had the land under the Colours House been rezoned to urban core with consideration and stipulations for the structure that was already there, then the house would arguably remain where it's always stood. And there'd be no need for its preservation, whether on site or another location, but that's all water under the bridge. So what should we do going forward? I would propose that we should not only vote in favour of allocating these funds to move and preserve the Colours House, but that we should also not stop there. We should bring to a vote the allocation of funds to hire a consultant to identify all of Auburn's historically significant structures, as well as to create a comprehensive preservation plan. We should proactively move to consider and create historic districts, historic overlay districts, or conservation overlays in order to avoid further minutes to midnight situations such as the one we're in now. Preservation does not happen by chance. It must be intentional. We should expand the purview of our Historic Preservation Commission to give it a stronger and more active role in the continuing development of Auburn. Additionally, we as a city should recognise, celebrate and revel in how attractive we know Auburn already is and has always been. And we should insist on terms with prospective developers that reflect that pride of place, a place where they were drawn to and are set to profit from. We should establish a fund or a funding mechanism into which developers would contribute because they and the city recognise that city history and public arts are just as much city services as are sidewalks and street lights. We have an obligation to imagine what our town will look like for our grandchildren and beyond. Prosperity, yes. A robust economy, yes. Green space, yes. The celebration of our history and the arts, yes. A city where all residents feel secure, yes. Otherwise, we're being less than average stewards, both to our city and its resources and to the citizens who call Auburn home. Therefore, I propose that we do not stop here. We shouldn't just view this moment as a single point solution to a single point property. There remains a bigger problem: how we value and preserve our shared vision of what determines a life of quality. I suggest that as a body, we, the City Council, and you, Mr. Mayor, work to establish 4 things: funding for a historic inventory, comprehensive historic area protections, expanded missions of existing city boards to address proactive measures, and a funding mechanism for public preservation of significant and cherished structures so that we, as a council, are not faced with more issues such as this in the future.
We brought this subject to our community because we felt like it was important to have an open discussion about it. This could have been decided upon by this body, certainly with less effort, and certainly more decisive at an earlier date. But because we've tried to set a tone of listening, debating, hearing, we've brought it to you. And so we've come to this point tonight. I think if anything that comes from tonight, this should be a catalyst, that if this is truly important to our community moving forward, that whether you're into preservation or heritage or historic, that it's time to come together and figure this out and put a plan together that makes sense for the future of Auburn. This community had a decision to make on South Gay Street and around the corner here a few years ago to create a historic district. That was brought up twice, and both times it was denied. And it was denied because most of the neighbors in that area did not want it. At the end of the day, the people have got to determine, I believe, that if they want their houses to be governed by a body that's going to tell them what to do and how to do it, that they've got to have some ownership in that. We can't tell them that that's the right thing to do. Hopefully, they've been a part of that. I'm all for that conversation. I'm all for that conversation. I live in an old house. My house was built in 1941. They're unique. In many ways, they're built better and, denser than today's houses. I wouldn't give anything for the home that I live in. It costs me a lot of money to keep up, but it's a grand old house. And these are important parts of our community. And if there's a district in this town that would like to consider being historic, you've got all of our numbers and emails, and we'll be happy to talk to you at this point in time. We went to the university a couple times and asked them to consider whether they would take this house on, and they made it clear to us that they were not interested, that they had all the old houses that they wanted, the maintenance was costly, and they were not interested in adding another one. Parks and Rec has made it clear that they do not have a program or a plan to house activities inside this home. But we continue to yell, as a dog does at the moon at night, trying to get anybody in the private sector interested to come forward and take this home from us. We were ready to participate. We were going to bring all the public safety resources together to get this house taken down and moved. We would help facilitate discussions with utilities to try to move things. And we couldn't, at this point in time, on September the 16th, no one has risen to the level to say, I'll do it, I'm all in. And so here we are, a house that's been sold 2 years ago, and we're at the 9th hour, and the city is being asked to tote the freight on moving it, rebuilding it, and bringing it up to public standards. I have no happiness in potentially seeing this house be devastated and destroyed. That does not bring any type of content to me. But at the end of the day, for me, the responsibility I have to the members of this community to spend their money in the right ways that does the most for the children in our community and the most for the people in my community outweigh the disappointment that I would have if this house is no longer with us. And so that's why I cannot support spending $1 million. I can't do that. I appreciate the debate we've had. People are passionate about our community. They care deeply about things in Auburn, which you've heard tonight from a neighborhood, now to members of our city, about whether it's a cut through or whether it's an old home, I think speaks to why Auburn is such a great place to live, because people really deeply care. And I hope that those are the kind of arguments and those are the kind of debates and that's the kind of passion that this council receives each and every Tuesday night we come here to meet. Because invested people are great citizens. So I thank everybody that took time to send us an email, everybody that gave up their entire Tuesday night to come down here and sit in these hard plastic chairs and listen to what's going on. All of you are what make Auburn great, and I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, do I have a motion from the council?
I would like to move to relocate the Colors home.
Second. We have a motion and a second. I would, Ms. Crouch, I believe that there should be a monetary, how should we equate the $1 million?
Well, the resolution says up to $1 million, so therefore, if you were to vote in the affirmative, then you're voting for two things. I think it's important. One is the letter of great, it's late, sorry. Letter of intent, and then formulation of a lease with Orange Auburn 3 LLC, and then the other would be the expenditure of up to $1 million in funds. Where those $1 million in funds would come from would be discussed at a later date, but you would be saying you want to proceed with all of these things to then move forward.
Do we have any idea what kind of projects or what would be cut out of the budget if we were to approve $1 million?
No, as the city managers indicated before, if we were waiting to see what your action would be on this, and then those will come to you at a later date for further discussion of what other programs would change or have budgetary changes as a result of this if you should move to approve this.
Approving of this, from a budgetary standpoint, we would approve up to $1 million, but have no idea where that money would come from.
Come out of the general fund, and we would shift some budgeting priorities around, and we'd bring them to you.
We don't know what would be cut.
Not at this time, no.
Okay. That's risky.
That'll be quite a discussion we would need to have.
Okay. So for Mr. Dixon, would his statement, his resolution, his recommendation, is that good enough? Would that
Yeah,
suffice
his
for
move
the
to
record?
approve is exactly what the resolution as written says before you.
Okay,
And I just wanted to make it clear that's the letter of intent and lease as well,
okay, thank
that are
you.
part of that.
Megan, I remember during a packet meeting before last, I believe, Jim explained, and I'm paraphrasing, so forgive me for that, but based on the timeline that the proposed undertaking of this would occur, we were looking at possibly an immediate expenditure of in the area of $200,000, with the idea that we would secure it on a piece of property and weatherize it to a point where we could consider investing further money on an annual basis over possibly a number of years. And if I recall Mr. Buston correctly, he said that he didn't anticipate any large difference to the budget if we're taking it incrementally into the future.
Yeah, and that would be your choice ultimately. I think the statement in the resolution is saying you're willing to go there, and I think to Councilperson Smith's comments earlier is, it's up to $1 million. There are ways to slice the pie, but you also have to be very cognizant of the fact we can't just pick it up and move it for $200,000, and there has been confusion. That's just the moving, that's best estimate, that's without utilities in there, and then we have to put it on a foundation, because what he was saying earlier about, well, you just move it, we can't let it rot in and of itself. There's a range in there, and I think the council was signaling, if you were to go there, that you may want to spend less initially and spread it over multiple years, and those things, because we haven't known which direction we're going, the staff's not been able to realize for you in full contractual items. And of course, each and every one of those would come before you. So it's not like if you were to approve this tonight, staff has $1 million checkbook to go figure it out. Each action over a certain dollar amount has to return to you for your approval every step of the way, and we would proceed in that fashion. The immediate expense would be the $24,500 should we get to that point with Orange Auburn, that would be due and payable in October.
But I understood him correctly.
You did. There are incremental ways, yes, sir, to deal with that at your discretion.
Thank you. All right. So we have a motion and a second on the floor, correct? Okay. This is a voice vote.
I move for a roll call.
Move for roll call? Okay. So we do have a motion and a second. Is everybody ready to vote? All right, so the motion is to approve the moving of the house and the funding to move the house. That's what the motion is second for. And so we'll have a voice vote. Vote yes if you're with that, and no if you're.
I asked for a roll call.
Well, no, that's fine. Roll call will be proper. Let's do a roll call. Go ahead.
Johnson?
No, ma'am.
Dixon?
Yes.
Hovey?
No, ma'am.
Parsons?
Yes.
Smith?
No, ma'am.
Taylor?
No.
Witten?
No.
Anders?
No.
Mayor, those are all the items of business we have for you this evening.
Great. Is there any other business from the council? Okay, at this point in time, we have is citizens open forum. This is your time to address the council about anything that might be on your mind. Please give your name and address for the record. And you remember you have 3 minutes. Yes, sir, you may be first.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good, man. You're good. Thank you for working with me on that.
Yeah, I apologize. Thomas Martin, 747 Davis Court. We can use that $1 million over there in Ward 1. Because we have senior citizens there that don't have a place to live. And it's terribly bad in our ward for me being here 30 years, there's no improvement. And we need improvement. That we need help. And our kids need help. So anything that y'all can do in Ward 1 for us, for the people of Auburn, that we appreciate it. Because just like I said, we have kids have to walk a half a mile to get to the bus stop because the buses don't want to go in there. So if y'all can help us out for our children, for our elderly people to improve our area, that we need a nice park too. We need sidewalks, we need lights, we need everything. You know, so y'all just come over there and check us out. Help us out. And anything that y'all can do, it'll be more than enough. It's better than nothing. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for working with us.
Mayor, can we have somebody check with this gentleman to see exactly where the kids are having trouble getting to the bus at?
And I also want to know about the lighting too. In what area are you talking about for its lighting? Because I have addressed some issues in Ward 1 about lighting.
Pick a street.
I don't know, you tell me.
That's what I'm saying. You can pick a street.
I mean,
Just pick a street, because that we might have, but there we might have 6 lights, 7 lights. A lot of dead spots that we can't even walk in because there's no lighting. That's a public road. We turn left on Foster, so we have a park there, there's no lighting. All up and down Foster, no lighting, there's no adequate lighting. On Drake, no adequate lighting. So it's hard to walk, because I love to walk, because I walk 3 to 5 miles a day. But I can't walk at night, because there's no lighting. Our elderly can't even go down the street, because there's no lighting. But let me say this from my heart. If y'all don't do nothing about the lighting, do something for the elderly. You know, because they need a place to live too. And there's a lot of elderly people over there in our district. Let's build some affordable housing for them, affordable apartments. Let's do something for them, because they help form and shape this town just like anybody else. Because they need help. Now, they might get $700 or $900 if they just get that a month, but I doubt it. They might get $500 or $600 a month. Where can you live in Auburn for $500 or $600 a month? It's nowhere. So, Mayor, we have a problem. Big problem. Councilman, council leader. But we have a problem. We need help in our own community. Of course, we still can use that $1 million. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to me.
Yes, sir. Who'll be next?
Mayor Anders, ladies and gentlemen of the council, Herbert Walter DeMar Jr., 412 Opelika Road, Apartment 111, and I live in an apartment complex, and I would like to echo a little of what the previous speaker said about affordable housing. I can barely afford to pay for the apartment where I live now. And I know it's a market issue, but if you could somehow create the environment for affordable housing, that would be great. I listened to the debate closely tonight on the Colors House. I did my master's paper on historic preservation, and I saw even then how controversial it is, how people have different points of view of what we should save and what we shouldn't. And I admire you for the decision that you made tonight, and I know it was tough for all of you, but I hope tonight we would consider, what the future of Auburn is. And if we need to preserve some of the past in order to remind people where we have come from, where we are now, and where we are going, that would be terrific. And I would hope that we can also do some preservation in Northwest Auburn as well. So I thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Lindbergh B. Jackson again. I commend you guys for making the decision to spend our money wisely Because if you were going to spend $1 million to move a house, and we have been basically begging in Ward number 1 for something that our kids can learn from, something that our elderly can look back on and say, look, my parents, my grandparents, 100, 200, 300 years ago that came over in 1619 can say, hey, look, here's their picture in this particular Rosenwald school. Here's their picture in a museum. Here's what African Americans has contributed to Northwest Auburn and Auburn as a whole. So we're looking for things that can help us to build pride in our kids and our community. And for $1 million, I could promise you we could scare up a committee that would actually bring tears to some of you guys' eyes, even from the university standpoint. But I also want to call your attention to an article that came out in the Focus about the new emergency room at Auburn University, the 3-story building, the operating rooms, and the other things that is going on in participation with the East Alabama Medical Center and Auburn University. And I've learned from speaking with some of the faculty there that that's 3rd story of that hospital and that emergency room is not even being occupied. So as I suggested to you guys at the last council meeting, let us have some discussion about what we're going to do with Borky. In the initial discussion about renovation, we talked about the exterior facade. I am 6.5 years of age. I'm like Connie. I went to school at Borky, and as far as the exterior facade, it looks almost identical to the day that my parents carried me there and I was shaking in my boots. And I would say to you guys, in this new plan to spend additional funds, let's do what we did at Frank Brown. Let's make the building look attractive. Sure, it's a very beautiful building, has a lot of potential, but let me tell you, I've heard stories about what you can do to a female and a male in terms of freshening them up and fixing them up. And Boykin is a beautiful place inside, but on the exterior facade, it looks like it's an old building, older than I am, and it is. So in this new plan to bring the clinic there, let us think more about the exterior facade and also what we're doing with the classrooms on the inside. Is there any questions? You give me a chance to say something else. And also, I am my brother's keeper. We thank you guys for listening. We look for an opportunity to do something about the kids that don't have transportation and the elderly that doesn't have transportation in Northwest Auburn to get to and forth until our new library is built. Thank you.
Mr. Jackson. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay. Move to adjourn, council?
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned.